it's funerals and inaugurations generally when you get together.
Yeah.
But it's always, or the opening of a presidential library will be another one.
That's another one.
But it's always neat to see the dynamic. I mean, the former political rivals who then, years later, develop some sort of kinship, or as we saw at the funeral of Jimmy Carter, a deep friendship between former President Ford and former President Carter. They became very, very close friends. We saw it with Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, where he would jokingly refer to former President Bush as his father. They bonded, and they both talk about it in their books, because that was a hard-fought campaign that Bill Clinton beat him badly. But they bonded on a trip I thought it had something to do with Haiti, but they were coming back on
Haiti was pretty...
Yeah, they were coming back on Air Force One, and Clinton, I think, gave former President Bush the bunk. He said, as a sign of, as a gesture of respect, it's like, listen, you're a little older, you take the comfortable, I'll take the sofa. And it was just, it touched him in such a way that was the beginning of what became a really neat bromance between former President Clinton and former President Bush. So it's always neat to watch them again.
You can still
kind of
see it, yeah. You can still see that rapport.
And now you see it with George W. Bush and Barack Obama too. So,
between the two of them, you could see it.
Joe, anything else strike you? I mean, aside from the obvious visual differences, in terms of the decision to move this inside, that has had an effect on what we're seeing today?
It's been interesting to see just the last-minute pivot, if you will. I mean, there's always these contingency plans in place because you never know whether it's cold, whether it's rain. It's been interesting to see just how fast, as a Friday morning, when they were going to still hold this on the west front of the Capitol, how many chairs and the scaffolding that had been set up and had been in the works for months, including rehearsals by band members as part of our military. And just to see this quick pivot over the weekend, again, contingency plans are always in place, but to see them actually come to fruition, visually, this is certainly striking because it is not, out in public where everybody's expecting to see, with large jumbotrons lining the National Mall. Those have all been taken down, Craig and Belkis, because they wanted to deter people from entering the National Mall. So to just have this more of an intimate setting, one that we haven't seen since the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was sworn into office. So it's just striking, and I'm sure President-elect Donald Trump, who has aligned himself in many ways with Ronald Reagan, will certainly appreciate that and align what is being witnessed here today as something of the Reagan era. So I'm sure he's appreciative of that fact, if anything, as well. Craig and Belkis.
I'll tell you what just struck me as we look at him right here, Baron Trump, as we see the president's kids come in, and last time we saw him, he was this little 10-year-old little kid, and now
he's ready for the NBA draft.
Look at him.
He's
6'6", handsome. I think he's a freshman at NYU now, and he's come back to the White House as the first son. Is that what they're called? I'm not even sure.
Yeah. And another fun fact, speaking of the Trump family, we know that Tiffany Trump, we saw her come in, the younger of the Trump daughters, her mother is there. Marla Maples is in Washington.
Okay, and she's about to have a baby.
Don't know that she's in the VVVIP section.
She may be in further back.
But she's there because she was on her social media. She was posting about being in Washington for the inauguration. So it's an extended family affair with the president-elect's former wife.
Tiffany is going to have a baby. That would be President-elect Trump's 11th grandchild once that baby pops out of the oven there. He's still baking, or she, not sure. But everyone's still standing here waiting for the vice president-elect and the president-elect, their families make their way in. We do know that, as is customary, the Chief Justice will swear in President-elect Trump, but J.D. Vance is going to take his oath of office with Justice Kavanaugh, who happens to be Usha Vance's old boss.
Yeah, she clerked for him, I think.
She clerked for him when he was a judge at the D.C. Court of Appeals, and he was her boss, and now he's going to swear in her husband. So how's that for somewhat of a full circle moment for them. The couple that met at Yale Law School, who would have told them those years ago that they'd
Dr.
be
Biden
here today?
And Mr. Emhoff, the Republican staff director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Ms. Emily Leviner, the Senate Secretary for the Minority, the Honorable Gary Myrick,
the introduction of the second
House of
gentleman,
Representatives Chief Administrative Officer, the Honorable Catherine Spindor, and
they're,
Mr. Bruce
they're
Fisher.
also announcing their escorts, who's walking them into the rotunda, and the vice president, I believe.
Wonder what's going through her head today.
Well, I mean, it's got to be a tough day.
Ladies and
Indeed.
gentlemen, Dr. Jill Biden and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
The spouses. I mean, Hillary Clinton talked about it at length sitting through the 2017 inaugural. She'd lost that campaign and she attended. And I believe she sat through the luncheon.
She went to the luncheon, and President Trump was gracious enough that when she came in, he stood up and everyone in the room gave her a standing ovation because he took the lead and showed her that grace, which was nice.
She talked at length about just how really painful it was to be there that day under those circumstances, but she also
part of the job.
The importance of the symbol of being there. She had to be there. So I think it's fair to say that the vice president probably is in that spectrum of emotion as well today.
It's part of the JOB, as you always like to say. But yeah, it is an important day, and again, it's about what today represents for us as we watch as a country.
What did we say? You mentioned this last week. The Bidens are heading where when they leave?
California.
Yeah, it's
California.
I suppose she's counting down, until the warm weather and just being able to exhale after all this
And for
stuff.
President Biden, it's not just, okay, my 4 years as president are up. It's 50 years of public service. This has been his life. Former senator, tried to be president 3 times, and the 3rd time was the charm. And really, he won it during COVID. So at his inauguration, for his swearing-in ceremony, he didn't get all this. They maxed it out to 1,000 people because of COVID protocols. So he finally gets his wish, but it doesn't really, he doesn't get all the pomp and circumstance that comes with the job because we were in the pandemic during the time.
He's been clear that he's not retiring. He plans to continue his work at the Penn Center and his work on foreign affairs particularly and domestic issues. So he still wants to be a part of the conversation because, as you point out, it's been his way of life virtually his entire life.
2 years.
So he's not going away by any stretch of the imagination, but probably like most folks who leave the Oval Office, a little downtime when they leave in January is usually understandable after carrying the burdens of this office for 4 years. So we're at the point now that the spouses have been introduced. The outgoing president will have his, perhaps his last entry with Hail to the Chief.
I guess they're all packed up because they're like, Dr. Jill Biden, here's your purse. There's no room for it anymore. We've packed up the White House and all your stuff is in the moving truck. You might want this.
And there's a terrific documentary, folks, if you're interested in seeing it, but it focuses on the hive of activity at the White House that really at noon. I mean, there are some things they do ahead of time in terms of preparing to move out and move in. But so when the president-elect returns to the White House this afternoon as President Trump once again, his photos are on the wall, his favorite gadgets are on his nightstand, the bath towels are folded the way he likes, everything is assembled, but it starts at noon, and it really shifts into high gear during the parade period and whatever else. And in the interim, the Biden's things are being removed.
We should all be so lucky on moving day to have that swarm, that number of people doing all the work for us, huh? But this time around also, it may be an easier transition, especially for perhaps the First Lady, Melania, and even Barron this time around, because
she's lived it already.
Exactly. They'll know what to expect, how it goes, how it works, the ins and outs.
Ostensibly is why Dr. Biden, the First Lady, didn't host the tea for Mrs. Trump. Typically, the outgoing First Lady will host a tea for the incoming First Lady just to show here's a tour of the house. Here's how.
Not
here's,
necessary
Here's how we
this time.
use the kitchen and this floor and whatever. She didn't need to do it because Mrs. Trump's already lived there.
There was some flack that Vice President Kamala Harris
Right.
did not extend that
yeah.
courtesy to the Vance family and give them the tour of the Naval Observatory where they're going to live with their family.
Mike
there
Pence.
was a little flack about that she didn't do it.
The Pences did it for
Harris.
Yes, the Pences did it. Look, human nature is human nature, and sometimes hard feelings are hard feelings, and it's a brutal campaign.
And it was a hard-fought campaign. As we look at a live picture of Elon Musk here, who, by all accounts, from the President-elect Trump's words himself, is going to play a really key role in this administration. Already has an office set up in the West Wing.
We see South Florida resident Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, who made the visit, obviously, on a big day today. Doesn't appear she's going to occupy quite the prominent role this time around that she did last time around in the first Trump administration, but obviously she and her siblings and the rest of the family, most of the rest of the family, are there today.
They'll be advisors this time around more than actual members of the team, if you will. They won't have offices in the West Wing as they did round one, from what we've heard so far.
So we mentioned that they've been running a bit behind schedule, but they can move things around. So I'm wondering what sections of music perhaps they're skipping over,
cut?
or just in order to make sure the president is sworn in at 12, which is 30 minutes or so from now.
Some big entertainment scheduled as we wait here for the other people to come on in to the rotunda there to get the swearing ceremony underway. Big names this time around for the inauguration that we'll be seeing today, as opposed to the last time around. There was not too many big names. The White House did try to get, the first time President Trump, 45, got sworn in, tried to get some people to perform and whatnot, but didn't score very well. But this time around, we've got, my goodness, her name escapes me now, and it's on the tip of my tongue. The country singer, Carrie Underwood. My goodness. Carrie Underwood. We saw the Village People yesterday at the rally that we had at the Capital Bank Center. As we see the soon-to-be First Lady, Melania Trump, come in. The
former and soon-to-be. I've been reading a lot of comments on social media about the hat. She always looks impeccable. Just can't see her face.
Yeah.
But
in 20...
as you would say, she's given it.
She is.
She's given it.
Last time around, she chose a very sort of Jackie Kennedy vibe for her inaugural swearing-in dress. It was a powder blue, had the nice, almost very Jackie Kennedy vibes. It was by Ralph Lauren. Not sure who this is. We haven't heard yet, but yeah, there's a lot of talk about the hat this time around that you can't see her eyes in any of the photos, but she's nothing if not super fashionable, former model, so she knows what she's doing.
Someone was just trying to help us out with some of the music we're hearing, and now we're in this selection, and I'm a dope when it comes to that, but I know this I've heard this at weddings, this melody or this
and piano recitals.
Yeah, I can hum it. I can't tell you what it is, but I've heard it enough but as again, I think this is where they can make up some of the time by shortening some of these.
If you've attended a niece or nephew's.
Performing "Oh America," please welcome the Armed Forces Chorus and America's tenor, Christopher D. Macchio.
Well, I suppose it might be a good opportunity for us to listen in a little bit.
Let's listen in.
Take in this ceremony as though we were there.
America. be true to thee, true to thee, I will be. Oh, America, no weeping, let there be no wounded heart. I will keep you in my keeping till there be
As we see President and Vice President prepare for their entry.
From your mountains grand and over this land, you are beautiful to me. Oh, America, you're calling. Oh, I can hear you calling me. You're calling me. To be true to thee, true to thee, oh, I will be. And we will be as
ceremony, inauguration. This is the first bit of music we've heard. He was also at the RNC. He sang as well. He performed.
And the inaugural committee is making their way in, which again suggests we are getting closer to the important introductions of the
Honorable
president
Jackie Barber,
and
the
President-elect.
Clerk of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Kevin F. McCumber, Mr. John Bessler, Mrs. Kelly Johnson, Mrs. Iris Weinschall Schumer, and Mrs. Jennifer Scalise. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, ranking member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Majority Secretary, the Honorable Robert Duncan. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Devi Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President-elect, the Staff Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Elizabeth Farah, House Sergeant-at-Arms, the Honorable William P. McFarland, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, the Honorable Jennifer A. Hemingway, Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable John Thune, and the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Ranking Member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer, and Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar. Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome the chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 60th presidential inauguration. Today, President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance will take their oaths of office, and we will witness the peaceful transfer of power at the heart of our democracy. For the past year, I've chaired the Inaugural Ceremony Committee, which includes the leadership of Congress from both parties. We thank the committee and Capitol staff and law enforcement who worked so hard over the last year, and especially the last 3 days. You've done a beautiful job, and you have shown grace under pressure. Our theme this year is our enduring democracy. The presence of so many presidents and vice presidents here today is truly a testament to that endurance. We welcome President Biden and Dr. Biden. We welcome Vice President Harris and Doug Emhoff, President Obama, President Clinton and Secretary Clinton, President Bush and Laura Bush, Vice President Pence, Vice President Quayle and Marilyn Quayle. The justices of the United States Supreme Court are with us, all 9 of them I counted, and of course the Trump and Vance families. This ceremony marks what will soon be 250 years of our democracy. It is the moment when leaders elevated by the will of the people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, the guardians of our country. Through war and peace, through adversity and prosperity, we hold this inauguration every 4 years, and today it falls on Martin Luther King Day, a further reminder that we must strive to uphold the values enshrined in our Constitution, the freedoms, the liberties, and, as is inscribed on the entrance of the United States Supreme Court, equal justice under law. But what makes this moment more than a passing ceremony is all who are watching it across the country, the people of this nation, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things. President Kennedy, who at one point worked as a senator in this building and would often walk through this very rotunda, once said, "In a democracy, every citizen, regardless of interest in politics, holds office. Every one of us is in a position of responsibility. With that responsibility of citizenship comes an obligation not to seek out malice, as President Lincoln once reminded us, but to view others with a generosity of spirit despite our differences. With that responsibility of leadership comes an obligation to stand our ground when we must and find common ground when we can. With everything swirling around us, the hot mess of division, it is on all of us, to quote an incredible songwriter who just happened to be born in my state, to ensure that our nation's democracy is our shelter from the storm. There's a reason this ceremony takes place at the Capitol. In other countries, it might be in a presidential palace or a gilded executive office building. Here it is traditionally held at the Capitol, the People's House. It is a fitting reminder of the system of checks and balances that is the very foundation of our government, 3 equal branches of government. That is how, for nearly 250 years, our great American experiment, grounded in the rule of law, has endured. So, as we inaugurate a new president and vice president, let us remember that the power of those in this room comes from the people. The construction workers who build our country, the teachers and healthcare workers who nurture us, the troops defending our freedoms, and yes, the firefighters in Los Angeles putting themselves on the line for us. Our democracy's strength and grit must match theirs. May God bless our nation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Endurance through the years is the ultimate test. To persevere through time is the truest measure of an idea, an institution, and a nation. Our founders wrote the Constitution so that America could withstand all the twists and turns of time. They wrote it to guide us and to preserve forever our right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as much as the truths and principles enshrined in our Constitution remain the same, our democracy promises the American people the power to change, to chart their own destiny. That's the beauty. That is the importance of democracy. It allows the endurance, the permanence of a nation through change. It allows nations like our United States both to avoid the obstacles and to seize the opportunities God has placed before us, all while staying true to our founding principles. Today is our country's 60th inauguration ceremony. Like all the others before it, it is a celebration of our right to set our uniquely American course. The past several years have been trying at times for many, many Americans, and also for the nations of the free world that we humbly strive to lead. In November, Americans chose again to steer this nation towards greatness, the secure, safe, and prosperous future that our founders envisioned for all of us. And today, we celebrate not only their decision to do so, but also the simple right and wisdom of a free people to make their own choice so that their nation might endure. And now, allow me to welcome Archbishop Timothy Dolan and Reverend Franklin Graham, who will deliver our invocation. Please rise.
Be still and know that I am God, supreme among the nations, supreme on the earth. Let us pray. Remembering General George Washington on his knees at Valley Forge, recalling Abraham Lincoln at his second inaugural, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Remembering General George Patton's instructions to his soldiers as they began the Battle of the Bulge 8 decades ago. Pray. Pray when fighting. Pray alone. Pray with others. Pray by night. Pray by day. Observing the birthday of the Reverend Martin Luther King, who warned, without God, our efforts turn to ashes. We, blessed citizens of this one nation under God, humbled by our claim that in God we trust, gather indeed this inauguration day to pray for our President Donald J. Trump, his family, his advisors, his cabinet, his aspirations, his vice president, for the Lord's blessings upon Joseph Biden, for our men and women in uniform, for each other whose hopes are stoked this new year, this inauguration day. We cannot err in relying upon that prayer from the Bible, upon which our president will soon place his hand in oath, as we make our own the supplications of King Solomon for wisdom as he began his governance. God of our fathers, in your wisdom you set man to govern your creatures, to govern in holiness and justice, to render justice with integrity. Give our leader wisdom, for he is your servant, aware of his own weakness and brevity of life. If wisdom which comes not from you be not with him, he shall be held in no esteem. Send wisdom from heavens that she may be with him, that he may know your designs. Please, God, bless America. Please, mend her every flaw. You are the God in whom we trust, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Mr. President, the last 4 years, there are times I'm sure you thought it was pretty dark. But look what God has done. We praise him and give him glory. Let us pray. Our Father and our God, thou hast said, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. As the prophet Daniel prayed, blessed be the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings. He raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. Our Father, today, as President Donald J. Trump takes the oath of office once again, we come to say thank you, O Lord our God. Father, when Donald Trump's enemies thought he was down and out, you and you alone saved his life and raised him up with strength and power by your mighty hand. We pray for President Trump that you'll watch over, protect, guide, direct him. Give him your wisdom from your throne on high. We ask that you would bless him and that our nation would be blessed through him. We also ask that you would bless and protect Melania as First Lady. We thank you for the beauty, the warmth, and grace that she shows not only to this nation, but to the whole world. We thank you for Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and his wife Usha and their young family. May he be a strength to President Trump, to stand beside him, to hold up his arms like Aaron held up the arms of Moses in the midst of battle. The prophet Samuel reminded the people, it was you that brought them up from the land of Egypt. And he said, now stand still that I may reason with you before the Lord. So, Father, we take this moment to stand still, to remember the great things that you have done for this nation. Thank you for the protection, the bounty, the freedoms that we so enjoy. We remember to keep our eyes fixed on you, and may our hearts be inclined to your voice. We know that America can never be great again if we turn our backs on you. We ask for your help, and we pray all of this in the name of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, your Son, my Savior, and our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Associate Justice Kavanaugh to administer the Vice Presidential Oath of Office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith
That I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same.
and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely,
That I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
And that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Please welcome Chief Justice Roberts to administer the Presidential Oath of Office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
first time since 1893, when Grover Cleveland returned to the White House, Donald John Trump is the 47th president of the United States. They were considerably behind schedule, but shortened things so he could take his oath as constitutionally required by the noon hour, surrounded by his children and, of course, his wife, his new vice president. So you can drop the elect. He is President Donald Trump, and momentarily he'll receive the formal introduction and deliver his inaugural address.
As we watch there, Barron shake former President Biden's hand as they move out there.
And my lip reading, as far as I could tell, when he reached to shake former President Biden's hand.
We have to get used to that.
Yes, yes. He said, "Joe, thank you, Joe." And now the introduction.
The Armed Forces Choir, or this might be the U.S. Naval Academy Glee Club. Not sure at this point, because as Craig mentioned a moment ago, they did make some adjustments to get the swearing in, the actual swearing in ceremony, straight up at noon. We did expect that Carrie Underwood was going to sing America the Beautiful at some point. Should that have happened prior to? Yeah. Will it still happen? We'll see. They're making a lot of adjustments in the background here to try to get things back on track, I should say. But it's
well, the tough part was over because they have to have it done by noonish. So now that that's taken care of and the president's been sworn in, they can rearrange.
The producers are scrambling up in the control room trying to get Carrie Underwood or where she may need to be. Lee Greenwood also, we were supposed to hear him sing God Bless the USA. When the then President-elect Trump was walking out to take the oath, he should have been singing God Bless the USA, which is the song that we heard so much during the campaign at all the rallies and everything. We heard it, and that appears to have been scrapped altogether, unless now maybe they put it on at the back end. But I guess the question now becomes, do we get all these people to do all the singing they were going to do, or do we move on to the signing of the executive orders and the lunch and keep things on schedule? What happens now?
Well, and the inaugural address. That's next. That's the marquee event.
That's next.
You deliver the speech for the ages. So once all of this concludes, ordinarily he'd be in it by now. But again, because they've had to rearrange the order of things to accommodate the schedule. So we'll have the musical interlude, and then presumably then we'll hear from the new president. inaugurated president clearly delighting or taking delight in the reconfigured inaugural ceremony. And again, he still has to deliver his inaugural address, but that is just moments away.
We'll see what the tone of his inaugural address will be. Will it be short?
It is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the 45th and the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina have been treated so badly. And other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago. Or more recently, Los Angeles, where we are watching fires still tragically burn. From weeks ago, without even a token of defense, they're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But we can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural. And very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states. And the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country, we will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. Illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices. The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we are going to use it. We will bring prices down, fill our strategic reserves up again right to the top, and export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. In other words, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice. We will build automobiles in America again at a rate that nobody could have dreamt possible just a few years ago. And thank you to the auto workers of our nation for your inspiring vote of confidence. We did tremendously with their vote. I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury, coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before to restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government. My administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law. And we are going to bring law and order back to our cities. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. This week, I will reinstate any service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments while on duty. It's going to end immediately. Our armed forces will be freed to focus on their sole mission, defeating America's enemies. Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. Thank you. America will reclaim its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for many of the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. So as we liberate our nation, we will lead it to new heights of victory and success. We will not be deterred. Together we will end the chronic disease epidemic and keep our children safe, healthy, and disease-free. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation. And right now our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We're going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit of unity to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. We will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, and independent nation. We will stand bravely. We will live proudly. We will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
President Donald Trump's inaugural address today, but the second one in his career as a politician, saying, quote, that the golden age of America begins right now, and promising that from this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected all over the world, going on to say that America's decline is over.
Well, he didn't waste much time. From the jump, he kind of went in and said he plans to reverse a lot of what you've seen done over the last 4 years. Before we do the dissection of the address, we want to go and listen back in, because now we're going to see Miss Carrie Underwood. She was floated, as we say in our business.
Exactly.
But now she's going to perform America the Beautiful. So we'll listen in at the ceremony.
Mics. Yeah, this is live television as we're watching it. We talked earlier how they made adjustments to the lineup of today's events because they were running a little behind schedule, and now it looks like Carrie Underwood is waiting for her music to start so she can start. Something started, but I'm not sure if it was maybe what she was going to say.
Right up, and now she's thinking, is this really happening right now? I'm supposed to be singing, and what happened to my music? So I'm sure someone there, some engineer, some tech is frantically trying to figure that out too. But as Belle mentions, they rearranged the program and the sequence of events and appearances to accommodate the constitutional requirement the president take the oath at noon. That happened, and now they're bringing some things back that they floated, that they set aside, assuming they can fix whatever technical problem they're having with her music.
Well, she's there, she's ready, she's got a beautiful voice, and it sounds like she's saying, help me out here.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to
Well, when you're in a jam, you improvise.
And she can improvise. She's got certainly the voice to carry that through without a doubt. Sounded great.
Senator Fisher will now introduce the benediction clergy.
And it sounds like now we're going to get the final.
The Nebraska senator will introduce
Rabbi Ari Berman,
the benediction.
Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, and Reverend Frank Munn to provide prayers of benediction.
Let us pray. Almighty God, your prophet Jeremiah walked the streets of Jerusalem and blessed its inhabitants with the Hebrew words, Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach BaHashem. Blessed is the one who trusts in God. Thousands of years later, this great nation, which adopted these words as its motto, "In God we trust," stands at a moment of historic opportunity. Americans are searching for meaning. Our merciful Father, help us rise to meet this moment. Bless President Donald J. Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance with the strength and courage to choose the right and the good. Unite us around our foundational biblical values of life and liberty, of service and sacrifice, and especially of faith and morality, which George Washington called the indispensable supports of American prosperity. Guide our schools and college campuses, which have been experiencing such unrest, to inspire the next generation to pair progress with purpose, knowledge with wisdom, and truth with virtue. Hear the cry of the hostages, both American and Israeli, whose pain our president so acutely feels. We are so thankful for the 3 young women who yesterday returned home, and pray that the next 4 years brings peace to Israel and throughout the Middle East. Almighty God, grant all Americans the opportunity to realize our shared dream of a life filled with peace and plenty, health and happiness, compassion and contribution. Stir within us the confidence to rise to this moment. For while we trust in God, God's trust is in us, the American people. America is called to greatness, to be a beacon of light and a mover of history. May our nation merit the fulfillment of Jeremiah's blessing, that like a tree planted by water, we shall not cease to bear fruit. May all of humanity experience your love and your blessing. May it be thy will, and let us say, Amen.
Let us pray for our 47th president. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that you gave our 45th and now our 47th president a millimeter miracle. We are grateful that you are the one that have called him for such a time as this, that America would begin to dream again. We pray that we would fulfill the true meaning of our creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We pray that you use our president, that we will live in a nation where we will not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we are so grateful today that you will use our 47th president so we would sing with new meaning, my country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and because America is called to be a great nation, we believe that you will make this come true. So let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous hilltops of California, but God, we're asking you not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and every molehill in Mississippi, from every state, every city, every village, and every hamlet. And when we let freedom ring, we will be able to speed up that day where all of your children, black men and white men, Protestant and Catholic, Jew and Gentile, will be able to sing in the meaning of that old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank you, God Almighty. We are free at last. If you believe where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Come on, put your hands together and give your great God great glory.
Almighty and eternal God, we gather here today in reverence, joined in our shared hopes and dreams for our beloved nation. In this sacred moment of the inauguration of President Donald J. Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, we turn our hearts to you, seeking your divine assistance and abundant blessings upon this pivotal moment in history. We come before you with profound gratitude for the many gifts you have bestowed upon our land. Thank you for the freedoms we cherish, for the strength of our communities, and for the resilience of our spirit. As our President and Vice President embrace their newly appointed roles, we humbly implore that your everlasting love and wisdom will envelop them. Grant them the clarity of mind to navigate the challenges that lie ahead, and the compassion to serve all citizens with fairness and integrity. May their hearts be filled with a giving spirit and sincere understanding for those whom they represent. May they be beacons of hope in times of uncertainty and prophetic voices in defending the dignity of all created life. We pray for a spirit of collaboration to flourish in our government and across our nation, fostering an environment where dialogue and heartfelt listening will prevail over division or discord. May each decision made by our President and Vice President reflect the values of justice and peace. As we embark on this new chapter, we also seek your comfort, O God, for those who feel lost or disheartened. In this time of transition, may your light shine upon them, reaffirming their belief in a brighter tomorrow. May we all strive to lift one another, supporting our fellow citizens with kindness and empathy, recognizing that together we can overcome any adversity. Grant us the strength to endure, the courage to face our fears, and the clarity to see the light that remains, even when clouds of uncertainty may gather. Inspire our new leaders to be champions for the vulnerable and advocates for those whose voices are often silenced. May they pursue policies that promote the well-being of all, seeking to build bridges that will foster unity and belonging. As we stand witness to this inauguration, we hold fast to the faith, to our faith in the goodness of each of us and the possibility of change. We trust that with your guidance, O God, our nation can move forward to a future filled with promise, prosperity, and understanding. And finally, we lift our hearts in gratitude for the beloved parents of President Trump. Without Mary and Fred Trump, this day would never be the miracle that has just begun. From their place in heaven, may they shield their son from all harm by their loving protection, and give him the strength to guide our nation along the path that will make America great again. Let us go forth now with these words of President Trump's emblazoned on our hearts. As long as we have pride in our beliefs, courage in our convictions, and faith in our God, then we will not fail. We stand tall, we stand proud, because we are Americans, and Americans kneel to God, and to God alone. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for our national anthem.
Can you say, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose the stars and bright stars through the perilous fight of the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket and glee, the bombs bursting in earth, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled
Ceremony has
Ladies and
concluded.
gentlemen,
The
please
president,
be seated.
vice president sworn in, but this is just the beginning of a long day and evening for the new president and the new vice president. There's still lots more to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain at your seats while the president and official party depart the platform.
Okay, so now that they're sort of back on track. They again rearranged. The national anthem would have been earlier. Now they're back on track. So while the president and the former president and their parties leave the rotunda,
Notice the speaker said depart the platform. He didn't get the updated script.
Next up would be the departure ceremony for the former president and Dr. Biden. Assuming they still do that on the East Front, the steps, the Trumps and the Bidens walk out together.
It is on today's official agenda, so...
I mean, they are behind schedule, and if they wanted to cut, they could cut, but that's a pretty significant moment. And again, maybe we can bring Joe Rotes in the conversation. It's striking in that, and any former president, particularly when you talk about a switch of parties, will sit through an inaugural address where your replacement sometimes says, stuff about what you did. And President
you
Trump,
don't necessarily want to hear.
Exactly. And President Trump went right at it, right out of the gate. Joe wrote, I mean, it seems to me it was a little light on rhetorical flourishes, no ask not what your country can do for you sort of thing. But President Trump went through his litany of things he thinks were done wrong the prior 4 years, and he's going to set about setting them right, in his view, from day one.
Just to add to that, Craig, it almost felt like rally Trump at times during the speech. It felt like a Trump rally and not a presidential address at moments.
It was a lot of the campaign themes we heard about. Joe?
That's exactly right, Craig and Belkis. And Belkis, you took the words right out of my mouth. I will say right off the bat here that this was a vastly different speech from the one we heard from President Donald Trump back in 2017, where he referenced American carnage. So many people back then said that it was such a doom and gloom speech. But when he spoke today, you really did feel as though you were at another Trump campaign rally, like he was still campaigning, as he reminded folks who were watching, a national audience, of all of the things that he pledged to do during his campaign. While he stood up there today on Capitol Hill and said, well, I am going to deliver on some of these things. And it was interesting, as you mentioned, Joe Biden sitting behind him for all of this, and I mean, Trump saying some of these things without essentially turning around and saying, hey, this is what you've done to the country. This is what I feel you've done to the country. I mean, he certainly said it directly in front of him. And I did hear somebody in the room that we're in right now. And just to remind our viewers there at home where we are inside the FIU DC Center. FIU down there in Florida has a DC Center here. And there have been a lot of Trump supporters that have come inside here because it is so bitterly cold outside. But getting back to my point, as Trump was speaking, I heard one of the people that were inside here say, I bet Joe Biden's never been to a Donald Trump campaign rally. Well, he certainly was here now. So it's interesting. These people are familiar with what he says, and they were pointing that out here today. It was notable, some of the things that he promised, some of the things that we have been hearing a little bit about over the last couple of weeks as far as executive actions that the now president is going to enact here today. Going over, again, some of the quick highlights of the speech. He says, from this day forward, our country will flourish. It won't be taken advantage of any longer. Simply put, he said, I will put America first. Talking about immigration, things that he said on day one. He said he will be a dictator only on day one, and that is to get things done that he wants to do, things that he has been promising. And specifically here, he said that he will tackle immigration. He will reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, which essentially, if somebody crosses the border illegally, they are taken into custody. Instead of waiting here in the United States for them to go before a judge, they are sent back to Mexico while they wait for that turn before a judge. Essentially ending, Trump says, the catch and release policy. He says he is going to sign an emergency order that will allow him to send troops to the southern border. He will designate cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And he's actually going to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And that actually drew gasps here in the room that we are in, because you're talking about an act from 1798 that he says will eliminate gangs and criminal networks bringing crime to U.S. soil. Now, it'll be interesting to see how some of this plays out over the next couple of months. Border crossings have been down the last few months. They're not as high as they were during the first portion of Joe Biden's presidency. So see how some of this comes to fruition if Trump enacts some of these and then says, hey, it's down, border crossings are down, we won, or if they spike, or if it actually lowers it even further than what they are right now. He also went on to say that he's going to defeat record inflation caused by overspending and energy prices. And he says by doing that, he's going to do something that he, again, talked about so often on the campaign trail. He said that is drill, baby, drill. And that drew a lot of applause here in the room that we are in at the FIU DC Center. He says we are going to become a manufacturing company all over again. They're going to tap into liquid gold, and the U.S. is going to be making and manufacturing oil and gas. He's going to scale back electric vehicle mandates for the country, which is interesting because Elon Musk one of the founders of Tesla, was sitting 2 rows behind him as he says this. And obviously Tesla manufactures these electric vehicles. He says he's going to tax foreign countries to enrich our own citizens, which is something that economists have said isn't necessarily how this is going to work. You cannot necessarily tax companies on foreign goods. You're essentially taxing companies themselves who are only going to raise prices. So it'll be interesting to see how some of that plays out. And did promise something. We've alluded to this over the last couple of weeks. He says he's going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He's going to take back the Panama Canal. And he says it is time once again to act with courage and vigor here in the United States of America. Craig and Belkey?
And he mentioned also, that, and this was a theme that came up an awful lot in the campaign trail, the end of birthright citizenship for illegal migrants. And that's already getting blowback. I mean, a number of the executive orders he will be signing soon when he concludes the departure ceremony, a number of them deal with immigration, but it's not quite as cut and dry. I mean, there's blowback and there potentially will be challenges to some of what he outlined on his menu of agenda items today, Joe.
That's exactly right, Craig. And when you're talking specifically about birthright citizenship, some of these things are already enshrined in the Constitution. So he can go ahead and sign an executive order doing this, but logistically and legally, it's not something that is necessarily going to be done, on day one here. This is something that Democrats, civil rights groups are naturally going to work quickly to, challenge, and they will go to the courts and make their way through the court system. The courts will rule on it, and then appeals will happen, and then they can make their way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm specifically, again, talking about birthright citizenship here, and I just want to hone in on this. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution guarantees that all people born in the U.S. have the rights of citizens regardless of their race. It was ratified back in 1868. This is not something new. This is something that has been on the books here in our country for well over 100 years. So he is going to challenge that. He is going to test the limits of the court, and you will see some of these things that he will sign into action over today and tomorrow start to make their way through the court system there. Craig and Belkey?
That's definitely one of the things we'll be hearing about a lot. But one of the things we did not hear about during the address that perhaps a lot of people thought he might mention was the pardon of the January 6 rioters. Didn't mention them at all in the address, although on the campaign trail and even as soon as yesterday during the rally that he had last night, he talked about pardoning them on day one.
Exactly right, Belkis. And he did bring that up yesterday. I don't know if maybe he felt that was appropriate, inappropriate to bring up here during his swearing-in ceremony on Capitol Hill, where those January 6 rioters caused millions of dollars in damage, and death also happened here on Capitol Hill. So it's unclear if maybe he just felt the venue wasn't the place to do it, but it is something that he did bring up yesterday. What remains to be unseen is to the extent to which he plans to offer up some of these pardons. Are they going to be a blanket pardon for anybody involved, or is it going to be a pardon for some of the non-violent offenders that maybe got wrapped up in something? So that remains to be seen. Over the next 48 hours, some of that should start to take shape.
Joe,
Right, Belkis?
We're now looking at the east front of the United States Capitol building, and again, this is a portion of the inaugural ceremony that came to life in 1989 when George H.W. Bush became president and Ronald Reagan left Washington for the last time or then former president, where the Bidens will take the stroll across the parking lot to Marine One, which will now have a special designation because it's only Marine One when a president's in it, and he's no longer the president. But and then the Trumps literally are receiving the reins of power, and if I remember correctly, I think former President Reagan saluted George H.W. Bush. They saluted each other. Hasn't always happened that way, but this is always, again, symbolic of what is supposed to be a peaceful transfer of power.
It certainly didn't happen 4 years ago.
It did not.
None of this did.
It did not. But it's a touching moment, and it just it's always one of my favorite moments to watch it unfold. And gosh knows the rivalries, the bitterness, the rancor between the campaigns and the candidates. But for this period in time, they stand as the four of them to say farewell. So there's usually a little bit of music that accompanies this, but we'll listen in a moment.
And it's interesting for Joe Biden, especially because he's been vice president and president, so he's done both those roles, number one and number two. And again, we keep talking about a lifetime of public service, and he's just going to walk away from it now. Take a little break, but still be active on some level. He's, in his own words, he said.
Well, it can't be lost on him as they say their farewell to Vice President Harris and the former second gentleman, Doug Emhoff. He joined the United States Senate, was it 1972? I mean, he went in as a junior senator from Delaware, and he leaves as a former president of the United States. It's been quite the political journey, odyssey, career for Joe Biden and his wife, Dr. Biden. And so, yes, the Emhoffs, they don't ride in the chopper. They get their limousine service.
Their final limousine service as well, I imagine. So their stuff is getting packed as well. A lot of behind the scenes going on at the White House, at the observatory. The new furniture's coming in, the old stuff is out, and it all happens in like a matter of 5 hours, I think. You'd know more about that than me.
Well, and they probably have a little less time today because they don't have the length of the parade.
That too. Well, there's still going to be the parade, quote unquote, inside the Capital One Arena, whatever we're calling that now. There's still going to be some kind of a parade in there.
But right now, and I guess they keep a person on retainer, but by the time the president makes it to Statuary Hall for lunch, the gift they traditionally give the new president is a framed photo of him being sworn in, a large one. So I guess that's being printed and mounted and framed as we speak.
They are just busy little bees. At the White House today, trying to get everything done quickly.
So with former Vice President Harris and Doug Emhoff, their departure, now all that's left is for the Trumps to say so long to the Bidens, and we're about to see that happen right about now. We'll sit back and take it in because it really is a historic moment. So we'll take it in together.
We could hear what they were saying, but perhaps down the road we'll get some excerpts or some of the comments that we've made there might be released. Maybe we won't. Yeah.
Maybe they keep it between us.
Maybe not. We do know that former President Biden has left a letter for President Trump in the Oval Office, which is also a very traditional.
Reagan.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that then President Obama left a letter for newly elected President Trump back in
I think they've all done it.
When was that? But he was so moved by it that he really liked that that tradition.
I don't. This is the choreography of this. One thing that I'm noticing, ordinarily, since they started doing this in 1989, the new president would always remain on the steps. The former president would walk the length of the parking lot with his partner by themselves. The Trumps accompanied them to the helicopter. That's the first time in my memory that that's ever happened that way. It was always typically they would stand there in their mark.
What do you think that's about?
Well, it's a nice gesture maybe, or maybe it was just they felt like, who knows? I wouldn't presume to know the thinking that went into it, but again, it's a nice moment that you can see after everything that led up to getting this moment.
I'm thinking Melania's just hoping that hat doesn't fly off her head. That I can almost guarantee.
So what happens from here, assuming that everything stays the way it does, whatever the designation is for Marine One takes the Bidens for one last lap around the capital city, shows them the sights, and then it's off to Andrews.
Any other Bidens in the chopper with them, staff, or that you know of?
Do not know. I mean, it's a big family, so maybe we'll see you at Andrews. Meet us there. Or unless they boarded them ahead of time.
They'll be taking a selfie in there, their final time.
Well, I did see they've already archived former President Biden's Instagram account, and he and the former First Lady took a selfie.
They did take one
along the portico outside the Oval Office, so thanking everybody. So
I did see that as well.
They did do that, and with that Marine One. Now, I will say, when this started in 1989, and the Reagans were on, the Bushes and the Quayles stood on those steps until the chopper took off. They waited. So it is cold
today.
It is cold out.
We've got well, maybe that's why President Trump and the First Lady Melania walked them all the way to the door of the chopper there, so that they could all go inside. I did not keep track of how long the president's speech was, but so far the longest on record was 8,445 words by William Henry Harrison, which is the longest, and it was so long that many think that it was in 1841. It was such a cold day, they did it outside. He caught a cold and died of pneumonia a month later. So
and maybe
I didn't keep track of how many minutes President Trump's was.
It felt like 25, 30 minutes. I don't know if Joe is still with us, because I was curious. Oftentimes when the address begins, the White House will release the text, and I was trying to keep track of points at which it seemed as though the president was reading the text, and points where he drifted off.
And he'd go off into rally mode.
Yeah. But Joe may have some of those answers.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I hear him now.
Yeah, it was about a roughly 30-minute speech, a little bit shorter than Joe Biden back in 2021, but it was about a 30-minute speech. You know, it's interesting is I might be a couple seconds behind you guys here as I'm watching Marine One taking off here. We do have a little bit of information as to where the Bidens are now going to be going. Joe Biden, the former president, his wife Jill are going to travel to Santa Ynez, California. They had already done a vacation there over the summer. They are going to go on vacation there. I guess, you know, after leading the country for 4 years, you need a bit of a break and to unwind a little bit. So they're going to fly out to one of the Air Force planes, but it will not be Air Force One at this point. Belkis, I believe it was you who mentioned it will be a special air mission. This will be Special Air Mission 46, referencing Joe Biden as the nation's 46th president. And not long after that, they are going to be making their way to California. And as far as the turnover, I was listening to the two of you talk. That is well underway right now over at the White House, and it is a very fast turnover. Immediately after Biden and Trump left the White House earlier this morning, the turnover started to happen. Immediately, the Resolute desk there in the Oval Office had to be disassembled. They took the rug out of the Oval Office, and then they brought in a rug that was designed by former First Lady Nancy Reagan and unfurled that into the Oval Office there. That's the same rug, if anybody follows some of this, that's the same rug that was on the floor of the Oval Office back when Trump was in office, back from 2017 to 2021. And immediately after that, they had to start reassembling the Resolute desk there back in the Oval Office so that they could start getting all of this in order. That is just one segment of the turnover that is furiously happening here at the White House. As far as the goodbye ceremony that we just witnessed here on the East Portico of the Capitol just a few moments ago, it's something that is an honorary departure there. It's usually kept pretty quiet, and it dates back to the beginning of our country. I was looking through my notes here, and there was a handbook of official and social etiquette talking about the inauguration ceremonies published in 1889, and it describes the outgoing president's departure as no ceremony other than the presence of members of his late cabinet and a few officials and personal friends. Well, you saw a little bit of that here today. The president is expected, President Joe Biden I'm talking about here, is expected to leave the Capitol as soon as is practical after the inauguration of his successor. That is why you see it unfold the way that it did. And I did hear you say about, the waving goodbye that we've seen in past, but it is cold here in Washington, D.C. I don't doubt that they wanted to get back inside where it's warmth and start to get a move on as we now start to see pictures of this inaugural lunch that's going to be taking place over the next 45 minutes to an hour. Craig and Belkey.
And Joe, I mean, oftentimes the former president, upon their arrival at Andrews, they're met by some supporters, a group of their supporters, and sometimes they'll deliver farewell remarks at Andrews before they board the special air mission to head wherever they're going to head. Do we know that will happen indeed with former President Biden today?
We haven't been informed that that's going to happen. At least I haven't been informed looking through everything I have here. I haven't been told unless there's other information out there. I do, if memory serves me correctly, back in 2021, it's not... It is common that they will speak there to their supporters. If you remember back in 2021, President Donald Trump was leaving the nation's capital under much different circumstances than President Joe Biden is here today. And his family was even there to greet him on the tarmac. There were plenty of supporters there as well on the tarmac to cheer him on. And he did go over and he greeted them and shook their hands, and he was able to say hello to them. You would only anticipate that it would be the same situation now that we're out of an era of COVID where people needed to isolate and be away, 6 feet. And so you would presume that as Joe Biden gets there to the airport, he would be able to do that.
And wherever they arrive in California, I'm not sure what airport that would be, but oftentimes they get...
I think they're headed to the Santa Barbara area.
So that they would get an arrival welcome at their arrival as well. So we'll see the former president and former first lady a couple of times today. Obviously not as much as we'll see the new president and his family, but that's typically how the day will unfold for the folks who are now leaving Washington and leaving the White House.
So, Joe, the next order of business on the agenda is the president's signing room ceremony, where we keep hearing about all those executive orders he plans on signing, some 100 or so executive orders. We've talked about a few, but what other ones have you heard about? He mentioned the southern border emergency, that he plans on the mass deportations, returning criminals back to their home countries, talked about energy to boost U.S. energy production, the Panama Canal, the Gulf of Mexico going to Gulf of America, calling Mount Denali back to calling it Mount McKinley in Alaska. What other executive orders are on the list there that you know of?
There's going to be so many, upward of 100 that we've been talking about. Some, again, are going to be able to go into effect perhaps right away. Some might take a little bit longer. We talked about these January 6th rioters that have been imprisoned. Trump has long said he felt that they were falsely imprisoned or wrongly imprisoned, so we can expect to see some action perhaps on whether or not he is going to pardon any or all of them in one single batch. He's also talked about being able to end the Russia-Ukraine war on day one, but logistically that is not going to happen. That's not something that can happen, although he has said it can happen with a phone call. He has since, in recent interviews within the last couple of weeks, said that that is something that's going to need to happen over the course of a couple of months, maybe bringing both sides to the table. It'll be interesting to see if that's something that he'll be able to make happen between Russian President Vladimir Putin as well as Ukraine's president as well. So those are just a couple of the other things that you're going to see happening here on Capitol Hill today. We don't have eyes on the president right now because
actually we do.
He is behind the scenes. Oh, we do. Okay.
We do. I know for folks at home, Joe doesn't have the benefit of all the accoutrements of a studio. We do. We have a monitor. Yes. So the president and first lady are now making their way. That looks like a Speaker Mike Johnson just introduced them, or at least introduced their arrival at this for this portion of the inaugural ceremonies. And I think you can hear, as you see, the Vice President as well, and Mrs. Vance, an enthusiastic crowd welcoming them. with the podium set with the seal on it, it would suggest he may have something to say here, which is
something not we don't usually see a second. Looks like the vice president's going
thank
first.
You all so
this
much
is new.
for being here, and was that a hell of a speech or what? That was, man. That was a good way to start it off. You know, I didn't know exactly what the president would put in that speech, and I hoped to myself that he wasn't going to hold back, and sir, you didn't hold back. That was a hell of a way to start the next 4 years, but I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and I know I speak for the president and for all of us, thank you, thank you, thank you for making this possible. We love you. We wouldn't be here without you, and we're going to make America great again together for the next 4 years. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, having stood outside for about 5 minutes to wave goodbye to the Bidens, thank God we moved that thing indoors, because it was a beautiful ceremony and it was cold as hell outside. So, sir, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
No, he's right. I said, oh, look at this beautiful sunny day. We blew it. And then I went outside and we were freezing. You would have been very unhappy. The sun was very deceptive, I will tell you. It is cold out. And I'm sort of saying, you know, that was so beautiful today. Maybe they should do it there every 4 years. Does that make sense? I don't know. Because, you know, the outdoor thing is really good, but it gets a little cold around this time of the year, as some people have noticed. And a lot of times they suffer through it. There was no suffering in that room. It was 72 degrees. It was perfect with the best acoustics I think I've ever heard in a room. This is not so bad either. But I just want to say, you're a younger, far more beautiful audience that I just spoke to. And I want to keep it off the record. I want to keep that off the record. Because I don't want to have all those big shots up there. I don't want to think you're more powerful than them, you look better than them, and I love you. Now, we just had a great time. We just had a great day. This was amazing. You know, when you think we took a journey, I mentioned in the speech, a lot of people said that was not a journey that was possible, and it was indeed possible. I didn't really know too much about what they were saying when they said that, but a lot of people felt it, and we hooked up with J.D. very early. I watched J.D. over a period of time. I endorsed him in Ohio. He was a great senator, and very, very smart. The only one smarter than him was his wife. That was I would have chosen her, but somehow the line of succession didn't work that way, right? But now she's great, and he's great. This is a great, beautiful couple, and unbelievable career. I just said to him, you are very upwardly mobile, because he hasn't been doing it that long, but he picked it up so quickly. Remember, the first week was a little bit like the fake news was hitting him really hard, and I said, ooh, this may be tough, but after that, it was smooth sailing for him. He took on everybody. He took on the meanest. I don't want to use the word corrupt because we're into a new system, so let's wait till the corruption begins, because it will. But he took on some pretty mean people, and he handled it well. I want to also congratulate Mike Johnson for the job that he's doing. Steve, we gave him a majority of almost nothing, and then I said to make it tougher on him, let me take 2 or 3 of the people, right? I said he'll only have to suffer with that for about 3 months. How are they doing, by the way? Are they? Is that moving along?
Totally uniform.
I said, do you mind if I take this one, that one, and a couple of others? He didn't mind. He can handle it. No, he's a man that's liked by everybody. I've never met a man like this. You've got how many is it, 219 or 220 or something? 220. And of the 220, 219 really like him. I noticed he got 1 negative vote once about 2 weeks ago. But I think even 220 like him, if you want to know the truth. And that's very unusual. I know a lot of nice guys in Congress, and they have 35 people that hate him. So if you have 35 people that hate you and you only have 1 or 2 or 3 votes, you'll have 5, I think. But that's going to be like, you know, the good news is when we get to that 5 number, it's going to feel like a massive majority. You can be really nasty to a couple of them at least, you know? So it's going to feel like hitting your head on the wall and stopping. It feels so good to stop, but he's done a fantastic job. And Steve Scalise's, he's our hero because, you know, I was with him. You talk about being shot. I was with him. He got some bad ones, and his incredible wife, and she really loves him. You know, you never know about that. I've been with other people. They were doing poorly, and the wife is like looking at her watch. She can't get out of the hospital fast enough. How's he doing? Oh, I don't know. He's all right. That woman was a mess. She was crying and crying. No, they're going to take him. They're going to take him. I told Steve when he finally woke up, it was a while too. The doctor told me it was the most blood they've ever transfused in any patient. They've never done anything like it. And here he is, the picture of strength, right? And he's been a great friend of mine, right? With a family, because of a family. And what a job you did. It worked out pretty much better than we even thought, right? And I did have a couple of things, you know, to say that were extremely controversial. And between J.D. and Melania and anybody else that heard, please, sir, it's such a beautiful, unifying speech. Please, sir, don't say these things. I said, I'm telling you, it's going to play great. They say, you're right. For this group of people, it's going to play great. You're the only ones I hurt by not, but we had some beauties, didn't we, Melania? She said, sir, calls me sir when she's angry. I said, no, I'm only kidding. I better say I'm only kidding, or the press is going to pick that one up loud and clear. No, but she said, no, I think it would be terrible. It's such a nice speech. I think it's, you know, it all depends on your delivery. How was the delivery? Was it good? But she said it's such a beautiful speech. You can't put things in there that you were going to put in. And I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, you know, it's action, not words that count. And you're going to see a lot of action on the J6 hostages. See a lot of action. And I was going to talk about the things that Joe did today with the pardons of people that were very, very guilty of very bad crimes, like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs, where they literally, I mean, what they did is they destroyed and deleted all of the information, all of the hearings, practically not a thing left. They deleted all the information on Nancy Pelosi having turned down the offer of 10,000 soldiers. You wouldn't have needed 10,000. You could have had 500, and it would have stopped. Because we may have 1 million people that day, the people that were there. You don't see any photographs, but we have a lot of great photos. But you don't see those photographs. They don't put them in. They show the people at the Capitol. But I was talking about that. I was going to talk about that. They said, please don't bring that up right now. You can bring it up tomorrow. I said, how about now in front of the I'll bring it up right now. You know, this little time delay is good because we're getting great reviews on the speech. Now watch. They'll take the speech and say, I didn't like it because he left there and he talked to people. But we're giving you a little more information than we gave upstairs. But no, they pardoned a lot of people. They pardoned, before we even get to today, they pardoned, 33 murderers, absolute murderers, the worst murderers. You know, when you get the death sentence in the United States, you have to be bad because they don't give it much. And he pardoned almost everybody having a death sentence. And if you went through the crimes that were committed, you wouldn't even believe them, the level of violence, the people that were killed, the innocence of people that were killed, and children killed by these people. And he pardoned them for whatever reason. He spared them, and but they didn't spare the people that they killed. And, you know, who knows what happens in the future. It's one of the worst because a lot of times they let them out early after that. You know, they say you're going to be in for life, but then all of a sudden they get let out for good behavior, and then they go on a rampage. You know, it's one of those little things, right? But I was going to talk about that. But I was really going to talk about the the level of, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to help a guy like Milley? Why are we doing Milley? He was pardoned. What he said, terrible what he said. Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney? I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying Adam Kinzinger. He's a super crying. I never saw the guy not crying. He's always crying. I looked at him. I remember years ago he was actually on my side. And then one day, when you don't want to kill people in wars, they turn against you. Liz Cheney hated the concept of not going to war with everybody. Let's kill everybody. Let's spend a lot of money on military equipment. Where her father works, right? And but what she did was incredible. Think of it. They destroyed and deleted all of that information that went on for almost 2 years against Trump. And the reason they did, because it was all false. Like the person that said, I tried to strangle a Secret Service agent. That's one of the toughest human beings I think I've ever seen. I actually had a friend saying, please don't change that, sir. You are the coolest sucker in history. Remember, she said, I put my hands around his neck because he wouldn't go to the Capitol. Made up fiction. And I was rebuffed. And the guy on the right is a massive weightlifter, probably stronger than me. Do you think he's stronger than me, honey? You know who I'm talking. Possibly stronger than me. Slightly younger than me, like, I won't say how many years because I don't want to talk about that, but a lot of years. But I had a friend that said, why are you disputing that story? That's the coolest story I've ever heard. That I would attack a karate champion, get slightly rebuffed, and then throw my arms around a guy with a neck about this big. Even though there are bars, there are bars, you can't really do that anyway. So I wanted to talk about that. But all of that stuff got deleted. And the reason it got deleted is they were all caught in lies. Secret Service testified, and they said it didn't happen. Actually, the two guys were very embarrassed. They're suffering because their friends are saying, did Trump really do that to you? But they gained a whole new respect for me. But it was just make-believe stuff, and there were a lot of make-believe stories made up. So rather than suffer the wrath, like the story with Nancy Pelosi, I offered her 10,000 soldiers. She knows it. She admitted it on tape that her daughter made. She's a videographer or whatever you call her, which I'm glad she is. Oh, she can't be in good stead with Nancy. But Nancy said it was my responsibility as she's leaving the Capitol. She said it was, and it was. She's in charge of security at the Capitol. But I offered them up to 10,000 soldiers, even more. One time I said more, as many as you need. But you needed 400 or 500. If 4 or 5, you 10,000, that would be more than the number of people there by lot. But we offered her 10,000. Think of it, 10,000 soldiers. In other words, J6 wouldn't be J6. There would have been no J6. But she rebuffed them. She didn't like it. No, she didn't like it. Maybe she wanted that to happen. But she's guilty as hell. And now we would have to go through the process because they destroyed all evidence. They deleted everything. There's virtually nothing left. The other fake story and so many other fake stories. And many people came out on our side. And those people now would got to find them. There's nothing left. So that's a criminal offense. If that were a civil case, it would be a criminal offense. If that happened civilly where you did that, it would be a criminal offense. So I decided I'm not going to make this speech complicated. I'm going to make it beautiful. I'm going to make it a unifying speech. And then when they said we have a group of people that are serious Trump fans, I said, this is the time to tell those stories. He knows. So anyway, but seriously, I'd like to, I think it was a tremendous success. I think we're very lucky we put it inside because it is really cold. We just went to the helicopter out of respect. It's something that's taken place for a long time. I guess it's as old as helicopters. You used to get into a stagecoach, now you get into a helicopter. Times change. But it's pretty old custom. And it's a beautiful custom, actually. It's a beautiful custom. I wish we could have had a better relationship. I wish we could have had a better relationship between Republicans and Democrats. I was with Senator Schumer. I said, Chuck, I think it's time we all start getting along a little bit because it doesn't make sense. I mean, we literally never get a Democrat vote. They never get a Republican vote, almost. And although there is a bill coming up very shortly that we have a lot of Democrat votes, right? That's going to be a very beautiful bill. We're going to have a deciding, I would say, within a week or so, I think. And it's going to be a very good bill. You all know what I'm talking about. So I just want to thank you all for being here. You have been our fans from day one. All these people all over. You've been our fans. This has been there's never been anything like it. There's never been anything like it. This has been a movement like no movement ever in history for probably any country, let alone this country. You know, if somebody's running for president, and if they go out and they announce they're going to Arizona, they're going to Nevada, they're going to someplace, if you have 200 or 300 people, that would be standard. Ronald Reagan would go out. I mean, outside of the last couple of days where people get a little excited, but even then you have a couple of thousand people. But if you're going to go someplace, any place, any one of the swing states, any one of the other states, I mean, how about the non-swing states? We won Alabama by 48 points. We won Tennessee by massive numbers. Wyoming, we won by numbers that are, nobody's ever seen numbers like that. And, you know, places like California, we did great, but when they send out like 38 million ballots, and nobody knows where the hell they're sending them, and then they come pouring back, the whole thing. You know, they passed a law in California that if you work in an election bureau, and if you so much as ask for a voter ID, if you say, sir, ma'am, could I please look at your voter ID? They have the right to put you in jail. You're a criminal. Can you believe that? There's only one reason that happens. They want to cheat. So they had it where voter ID wasn't accepted. But now if you even ask for it, this is seriously a bill that was just signed, passed in their legislature, and it was signed. And I think when we get things cleaned up and we get back to a little bit of normalcy, I'm going to ask the Speaker to really get involved, because I think we would have won the state of California, because, you know, if you look at my numbers with Hispanic, we're at 56%. And we won the Texas border that had never been won. As the governor said, he's doing a good job, the governor, by the way, of Texas. But as the governor said, it hasn't, oh, did I get lucky? Did I get lucky? Supposing I said, you know, he's not here, but the governor of Texas has done a terrible job. Wow, look at you. You mean we couldn't get you up in the front row? I tell you. Supposing I said, J.D., the governor of Texas, he's not doing his job. You heard what I said. See, I didn't know you were there. I said he's doing a great job. He's doing a phenomenal job. But now you're going to have a partner that's going to work with you, because you didn't have, not only didn't he have a partner, he had people selling the wall, right? We have a fence structure that we worked on, the governor worked on with me. And I didn't love it, to be honest with you. I wanted a nice precast concrete, you know, 40, 50 feet high, like a beautiful, could have been a T-shape, Y-shape. I love construction. I wanted that sucker to go up maybe 50, 60 feet. It would have looked beautiful, a nice Y shape. And they said, the problem is, sir, they climbed that like a rabbit. I said, what do you mean? No way. And they brought some of these guys out. They climbed it like... And the other thing is you hit it with acid and the thing will disintegrate. You know, they have things for concrete. So they needed very hardened steel, very special steel. And then they needed 7,000-pound concrete inside that steel, inside that steel. And then they have a rebar that's the toughest steel made. Very hard to cut. So this is why very little is cut. I mean, it's right. And then they put a anti-climb panel on top. I hated it. I said, it's so unattractive. And I said, why would that work? I don't believe it works. And I went to watch the Border Patrol, gave a display. We had actually 2 sets of climbers. The guys that climb up walls with drugs on their back, I mean, they got like 60, 70 pounds of drug, and they go as fast as you can walk. They go bip, bip, bip. Or we have Mount Everest type climbers. And honestly, the drug guys were much better. I couldn't buy.
The drug guys blew them away, right? But it's true, the anti-climb panel, they couldn't get around it. They just couldn't. You didn't have it. So sometimes you sacrifice beauty for efficiency, and we did. So we built this wall, and we built over 500 miles of wall. That's why we had such good numbers. The famous chart that came down, very thankfully, the chart that came down on my right, Governor. Had I not looked over there, I'm not speaking right now. You might be speaking here. You want to know the truth? You, JD, and we've got a lot of great people in this party, but I got very lucky, but we had the best numbers we've ever had. But I bought, you know what happens is when you fill it up, it's like water. You fill it up. Now we have 571 miles of wall. And they would always say, you know, when we renovated a wall, so there'd be like a piece of plywood sitting there for 60 years, or a 2x4 sitting for 60 years on the ground and rotting. Because, you know, and they'll say, you didn't build a new wall. Here we're building 50 feet up in the air, 30 feet sections, 50-foot sections, all steel, all concrete, all everything. And all, by the way, they don't even want me to say this, but what the hell, doesn't take that long time. They're all wired for all of the equipment. We put wires in everything so they can easily wire for all the different types of equipment. And if there's a doubt, we have to wire. Whenever we just look, you just find the wires all over the place up top, so we can just hook it up. We don't have to have wires on the outside, which wouldn't do too well, right? So anyway, so we built an extra 200 miles of wall, and the governor wanted to buy it. He tried to buy it, and they wouldn't sell it to him. He wanted to put it up himself. Could have been done in 3 to 4 weeks, 200 more miles, because when you do it now, they just keep going further out, further out, further out, getting around. So we did an extra 200 miles, and it was all bought. And they announced that they're not going to put it up. And that's when I realized they wanted open borders, and that's when I realized that people are going to come pouring through the wall like nobody's ever seen before. But you've seen it. A lot of you are here because of that. I made it my #1 issue. They all said inflation was the #1 issue. I said I disagree. I think people coming into our country from prisons and from mental institutions is a bigger issue for the people that I know. And I made it my #1. I talked about inflation too, but you know, how many times can you say that an apple has doubled in cost? I'd say it, and I'd hit it hard, but then I go back to the fact that we don't want criminals coming into our country. We don't want the jails of every country in the world virtually being deposited into the United States, and that man had to suffer with it. And he did an unbelievable job. I'll tell you, he was a very popular governor, but now he's like an unbeatable governor because of your border policies. He was fantastic. And he really was. So. Governor Abbott, he's a great man, a great leader. And but it did make him did you do it? You didn't do that for politics. You did it because you wanted to do the right thing. But I'll tell you, it sure as hell worked for politics too. It's self-preservation, that's right. But no, because the people are demanding it. The people of Texas are demanding it. The people are demanding it all over. So anyway, so we built it, and they wouldn't let us use it. They wouldn't let the governor use it, and other governors, they wouldn't let him use it. But he was the leader of the pack and did a great job. And then we heard about a month ago that not only wouldn't they let us use it, they were selling it. They were going to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar. Now, 5 cents on the dollar then, but today it would cost more than twice as much to build because we bought it like 6 years ago. And it was just sitting on the ground, and that does not do well for the whole thing. But it was just sitting on the ground, and I heard about it, and I called the governor, and I called a lot of people, your attorney general. And here's the story. They were going to buy it, and these are great business people. They were going to buy it for 5 cents on the dollar or less. And they were calling us up, we'll sell it to you for 200 cents on the dollar. In other words, it will cost you twice as much, so it's 200 cents on the dollar. I said, can somebody explain that to a judge? I mean, how corrupt is that? You'd think they'd say, maybe we'll sell it to you for 20 cents, 30 cents, but not 200 cents. So they were going to buy something for 5 cents, and they were going to sell it to us for a fortune. They were going to make they'd have it down in Fortune magazine, they'd put it as the deal of the year, okay? You buy something like that. But it was so corrupt and so horrible. And when we told that to the administration, they didn't care. They just kept going forward. They couldn't care less. And they kept going forward. They knew that they were trying to sell it back to us. They would have sold it back to us. You would have ended up buying it. You would have paid probably 50, 60 cents. Who knows? But they were going to use it for scrap metal, but then they made a much better deal. They could just buy it and sell it to us for 15, 20 times what they paid. 20 times, think of it, like 20 times what they paid. And we wouldn't let it happen. And the governor with his attorney general, Ken Paxton, they made a fantastic... They're a good lawyer. He's pushed around pretty good by people, right? I said, you got a great attorney general. They should leave him alone. He was with me. But Ken and the governor went to court, and a judge actually became incensed and actually called for an investigation. How could a thing like this happen? So he stopped it. So we're waiting to put that wall up. And now that you have a new president, that wall will go up so fast. The governor will complain, sir. This is Greg Abbott, sir. Please, the wall is going up too fast. Please don't do that. You know the story about winning. No, we're going to win too much. We're winning too much. Please, let's stop. People always love that one. We'll do this with the wall. Governor Abbott calls, sir, the wall is going up too fast. We can't take it. We just can't take it. No, I think you'll be very happy if the wall goes up too fast, right? But we'll get that done, and we'll work with you on that. But it was a great decision by a great Texas judge, right? And it was beautiful to watch. He stopped them right in their track. I mean, they were literally loading the stuff onto trucks. It was terrible. Honestly, it was terrible. And he wouldn't take it. So I'm so glad I mentioned that they have a really good governor in Texas. And I swear, I didn't know he was here. I swear to you, it sounds like a setup. I didn't know you would end. Did I get lucky? I said the right thing. Because there have been moments when I wasn't so happy with him, you know? But not too many, I can tell you that. So anyway, it's good to see you too, Governor. Great. But I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. I recognize so many of you. It's so crazy. But this has been a long journey. This was a journey that started in 2015, probably started 20 years before that. People used to say, you're going to run for president? You're going to run? And I always said, no, I don't want. And then one day I said, let's give it a shot. And what I talked about then was the border, too. I think it probably was the number one issue for me. Back in 2015, 2016, I talked about the border. And now I talked about the border, but this border is much worse. We fixed the border. It was totally fixed. There was nothing to talk about. 2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged, but that's okay. It was a rigged election. You know the only thing good about it? It showed how bad they are, showed how incompetent, and frankly, historically, this is a much bigger event. If that would have gone like it should have, the bad thing about it is some bad things happened, like a lot of people in our country that wouldn't be in our country right now. So that's the bad part. But I will say that it started in 2015, and right from the beginning, we went to the top. Day one, they announced Trump, and Trump went to number one and stayed there for the whole primary. And then we took on Hillary. She didn't look too happy today. We took on Hillary, a very nice person, but we took on Hillary and we defeated Hillary, and then we did much better the second time in 2020. You know, we got millions more votes. We got millions, like 10, 12 million more votes than we did the first time. No president has ever gotten that many more votes. I got like 9 million more than anybody else had ever gotten, and they said we lost. And because of that, I said to Melania, what do you think? And she said, you want to do this again? And had we lost, and had I thought we lost, I wouldn't do it again, because that's like the ultimate poll, right? But I knew how well we did, and this time we made it too big to rig. It was so big. They tried like hell in the butt. They tried to do it, and around 9:02 they gave up. Last time they did bad things. At this time, they just said, you know, I don't know if you saw Mr. Speaker in Washington. They had placards. They were all set to march. They thought it'd be closer. A gentleman asked me, a very respected gentleman asked me yesterday, how come the polls were so wrong? They showed you winning, but not in a landslide. I said, because people that are true Trumpers are so angry at the whole polling system and at the writers, the fake news, that they don't want to talk to anybody. So when you call somebody from Trump, who are you voting for? They say, it's none of your business. I'm not telling you. And that was probably 40% of the people they called. So they would discard that one, and they didn't show that. And then when the election happened, you know, the vote came, and it was much different, much higher than we're going to win, but they really thought, they couldn't believe, the one man said, I mean, it was so much higher. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by millions of votes, which is hard for a Republican. I'll tell you who came through. The unions came through. The auto workers were great. The Teamsters were great. The firemen were great. I think almost every union was great. The only one that weren't great, although Sean was great, and the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, was fantastic. But generally speaking, the head of the union was against Trump, but the union would be with us for like 80, 85%. Look what we did with the auto workers in Michigan. Look what we did with the Teamsters. The Teamsters were unbelievable. They were a solid Democrat vote, and they voted for Trump. So we had a great experience. This has been, now we have to go to work and get it done, because we have to do something that's going to be great. We're going to turn our country around, and we're going to turn it around fast. And I think this was a better speech than the one I made upstairs, okay? I think this was better, JD. I think this was much better, and I got to see my friend. So, Governor, take care of yourself. You call me, we'll start working. You know what that means with him? He's going to be calling me tomorrow morning at about 6. And I said, how about next week? You call me and we're going to get it started real fast. We'll really help you a lot. You've done a fantastic job protecting something which it's not supposed to be for the states. And amazing job you've done. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody. And I have a First Lady who's been incredible. She's been incredible. I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get hell when I say this, but her feet are absolutely aching. You know, those heels. And we thought we were leaving. We were going home. Sir, would you be able to go down and say hello to some of your other fans that are here? I said, oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Did you get to see pretty clearly the picture, I hope? Good. That's good. But because you wouldn't want to make the same speech again, right? But she said, darling, I love you so much, but my feet are killing me. I said, honey, let me just see how far it is. I asked the person. Oh, not that long, maybe 400 or 500 yards. That's 5 football fields. I said, can you make it? She said, we're going to make it no matter what. We're going to make it because we have to get, right? Right? And then we went out to the helicopter, though, just prior to this, and said goodbye. And it's a custom, and the wind is blowing like crazy. And with the hat that she's wearing, she almost blew away. We almost lost off her. She was being elevated off the ground. She almost blew away. No. So we all appreciate it, because you've been a great First Lady. A beautiful and a great First Lady. And they love our First Lady. You know, JD, whenever I make a speech, I see hundreds of times, we love our First Lady, we love, and they do, and they should. She's great. So I just want to thank you very much. I just want to thank everybody. And I felt that, I said to JD, should we give him the A treatment, the B treatment, the C, the D, or the F? You know what the F is? Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Governor. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
So that's, well, if you had the inaugural address.
Little impromptu.
This is the oh, God.
The inaugural rally speech?
Well, right. Unplugged, the unplugged version.
There you go.
This is Emancipation Hall, which is another hall of the Capitol, where clearly a number of VIPs who were ticketed guests, but they didn't have room to put them in the rotunda, so they gathered here. Ordinarily, this would not happen, but obviously they're important folks, and the president wanted to detour.
It sounds like on the way, a staffer said, sir, would you mind? And that was the obviously I listened to the whole thing, but you had to laugh that he says he looked over at Melania and was like, can we make this stop, honey? And she's like, honey, I love you so much, but my feet are killing me. As a female sitting here listening to that, been there, done that, I can totally relate to Melania's feet right now. But he did go on and on and on for quite a bit. But at least the First Lady got to sit down this time around while he went on and thanked her for being a great First Lady. So he's a good husband.
So, Joe Roats, we know you were able to listen along, and a lot of the themes from the campaign, we relitigated the 2020 election again for a bit. A lot of what evidently aides encouraged the president to avoid in the inaugural address, he went all in this off-the-cuff riff among these VIPs in Emancipation Hall.
Saying he liked this speech more than the one he just gave upstairs, the inaugural address upstairs. This is much more his style, Joe.
Exactly right, Balkis. He said it right there. You know, this is almost the speech that he wanted to give upstairs. He was able to give it a little more free-flowing down here, totally off the cuff there at the podium in Emancipation Hall, where a few hundred additional people gathered there. It was definitely not as on script as upstairs, a little bit more free-flowing. And as you mentioned, he called into question the results of the 2020 election, calling it rigged once again, even though time and time again, even though he tries to paint that as a reality, there is no proof that the 2020 election was rigged, and it has ended in failed lawsuits on the part of his lawyers and even prosecution for Trump and some of his allies over the years since the 2020 election. He did call out a few people there in the audience that had come to see him. They were seated there in Emancipation Hall, specifically Texas Governor Greg Abbott, heaping a lot of praise on the governor. Again, so much of what we're seeing here today, what we've seen on the campaign trail, has to tie back to immigration, and the U.S. southern border obviously is one that runs along the Texas border. He talked about how the border wall, when it was stopped construction down there in Texas, some of the supplies that were there, he claims the Biden administration tried to sell some of that off for pennies on the dollar, but he said that that is not going to be allowed to happen now. And as he stood there and talked to Governor Greg Abbott, heaping that praise on him, he said, you know, we are going to win. You have a friend now in the federal government. And he said the wall is going to go up so fast, Governor, you're going to complain that it's going to be too fast. And this goes back again to some of the executive actions that President Trump is going to sign into action today, sending the National Guard, the Army down there, sending troops down to the southern border to try and secure it. He is going to declare it as a national emergency, allowing him to use some of his powers to do that and try and build the wall, something that he wanted to see done during his first term in office, but never came to fruition. So that is really what he harped on, a couple of the things that he harped on in this free-flowing speech that he was able to deliver. And he left this one, I think, feeling a lot more happy and jovial as now he's taking pictures there in Emancipation Hall on Capitol Hill. Craig and Balkis.
All right, Joe, stand by. And as we mentioned, next up, the president does have to sign those executive orders. So there is, and I forget, there's a special room where this is done, where it's generally not a point where the new president says anything other than polite small talk among the people who are with him as he signs these executive orders and hands out the presidential pen. And then he still has the luncheon, the formal luncheon, where the VVVIPs are presumably already seated and waiting for lunch.
They've already gathered.
But they're not going to get lunch until the president and first lady and the vice president and the second lady get there. So they're cooling their heels in Statuary Hall.
Signing of the orders, Capitol. Usually, like you said, it doesn't take very long. But I think now with President Trump, once again, you never know what you're going to get. He might make a stop on the way if there's another crowd. He's really happy to be back in the White House, happy to be back at the Capitol, happy to be having, you know, getting reelected, that he'll stop and talk to as many people as the Secret Service may let him. So this is Statuary Hall, speaking of, where after the signing ceremony, he is due to receive his official gift from the bipartisan inaugural committee. So the guests, these are the VVIPs who were in the rotunda for the swearing in. They get to be at the luncheon, and now they're just
killing time.
The former presidents that were at the inaugural ceremony were invited, but none of them attended. And from what I just saw on social media a bit ago, I believe that's
is that him?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Who needs a haircut?
Yeah, the Meta. Meta guy and his wife there, along with other dignitaries. Mike Pence, I believe, is at the lunch, but his wife, Karen, declined, decided not to attend. But I do have the menu, if you care to know.
Well,
got 3 courses.
I am hungry, so please tell me.
It is lunchtime. Well, it's past lunchtime. The first course is a nice Chesapeake crab cake. It's going to be served with a Chardonnay. The second course is an Angus ribeye steak with carrots, broccoli rabe, potato gratin, served with a Cabernet Sauvignon. And the third course is a Minnesota apple ice box churn with sour cream ice cream and salted caramel. And that's basically a cake that's kind of baked in a loaf. It's a French way of baking a cake, and then it's served in slices. So there you go. But everybody's just waiting for their lunch.
It looks like Carrie Underwood's staying for lunch.
Oh, there you go. That is her on the right.
And we did see a moment ago the Attorney General nominee, Pam Bondi, a couple of seats away or a couple of spaces away from Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. So it is a bipartisan affair, the luncheon. And again, as they gather.
And he will speak at the luncheon as well. Yes?
Well, ordinarily, the Joint Committee presents him with the official photo from the swearing in, the framed photo. And that's an opportunity for him to say a couple of quick, thank yous. But again, because he seldom finds a microphone he doesn't want to stop and talk at, there may be something lengthier that happens. But ordinarily, it's here's your photo. Congratulations, Mr. President. Let's see. Yeah. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Perhaps not today. I believe we just saw at the top of the frame, we're looking at Barron, but right above, speaking with the other sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, was Senator Marco Rubio, soon to be Secretary of State. Marco Rubio. He's not officially approved yet, but he is expected to sail through that committee with no problem.
Justice Thomas with Ivanka Trump. So again, these are the VVVIPs.
This is the big, the mix and mingle, the schmooze.
Yeah.
This is the best part of these luncheons, the mix and mingle pre-sit-down lunch, really.
The mix and mingle, and just, again, you get two parties that really, the president made the point, can't seem to agree on very much of anything, but you get many of the senior members, the ranking members of the leadership of the parties in one place, and I'm always fascinated by the body language or you put on a good face for the occasion, but I'm always interested to see who's chatting with whom or who's not talking to the other one or
who's back to back, who refuses to acknowledge. And I believe there's Pam Bondi up in the left-hand corner. Oh, we saw her before. And there's a lot of big names.
And I believe that is the incoming chief of staff.
Oh, yeah, Susie Wiles.
Who is a Floridian. And when Mitch McConnell, the former leader of the Republicans in the Senate, Susie Wiles, when Donald Trump was on the ropes politically, she righted his campaign. And speaking of dynamic, Governor DeSantis, there was some reporting that the governor and was not a fan of Wiles because of her early support for Trump when DeSantis was making the run for the nomination. In the end, we know who won, and she's now one of the most powerful people in the U.S. government as the White House chief of staff.
And if you believe what people say about her, she really is almost like the Trump whisperer. She can get in there, really talk him off the ledge when he's on the ledge, really reason with him, and she is one of the few people that he really listens to when she speaks.
That's former Second Lady Marilyn Quayle, the Vice President Dan Quayle's wife, from Indiana, RFK Jr., and I believe that is his wife. They are together. There was some...
Oh, yes,
the actress,
Cheryl Hines.
Thank you.
Cheryl Hines, yes. There was a little bit of a separation, some scuttlebutt on the papers and social media and such, but it looks like, they're back.
A lot of people, back to Susie Wiles are, because I think, and I honestly can't, I lost count, 3 chiefs of staff in his 4 years? I think 3, maybe. So they're curious to see, can she go the distance?
It, yeah.
Because he's, the president doesn't lend himself to being managed in many instances. But to your point, she's been credited with having a bond with him and a way to work with him where she's able to get things done. So, but a lot of folks are curious to see how long she can maintain that role. Senator Murkowski, Justice Kavanaugh. I mean, it's a who's who of official Washington at the Statuary Hall luncheon.
It's a hungry who's who
yes.
of official Washington bigwigs there, because this should have started at 1:15 and it's now 2:07. And everybody's still kind of waiting. But normally, again, he would have been signing the executive orders and then does the lunch and then reviews the troops. And then the parade would start. And there'd be people lined up along Pennsylvania Avenue to watch the parade go by, the marching bands, the different civic organizations that march. But this time around, that is all very different, because there's 20,000 plus people gathered at the Capital One Arena, and that is where there is going to be the quote-unquote some type of a parade, because there is the floor on the bottom, and they're still going to have, they expect to have a parade of some sort. And after the lunch, the president is supposed to go down there and make some more remarks, which the crowd there will obviously love, and he'll love too, because again, it'll be like Trump unplugged, the way he loves to be, just free-flowing, talking, and, you know, off the cuff and saying what he feels in the moment. But, you know, 220 million plus people had tickets for today. Those tickets are usually handed out by members of Congress. They each get a set amount to give to their constituents. Yes. And there's many, many people that headed to Washington to be a part of this. And now a lot of people spent all that money to be there, and not everybody's thrilled that they couldn't be at the ceremony, couldn't watch from the mall. There's no real parade along Pennsylvania Avenue anymore. But again, with the abundance of caution, because it is so cold in D.C. today, it snowed yesterday, they canceled all of that and took everything inside. And President Trump said during that impromptu chat that he had in the hall there that he was glad that they took it inside, because even when they went outside to walk former President and First Lady Biden to the chopper, it was very cold. And in his words, he said that sun is really misleading because it was still really cold out there.
Would be remiss to not point out Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary designate. The Senate is going to do some work today, and they're expected to vote whether to confirm him. And indications are, considering the controversy that led up to it, indications are he will be confirmed.
But he has had quite the uphill battle with those confirmation hearings.
But the vote on Defense Secretary and a few other key positions, once the Senate's able to finish what they're doing here, those who are attending, will be taking that vote on that position and several other key positions today. Saw Ted Cruz is there, of course, the Texas senator.
There's Carrie Underwood. That's her.
Maybe explaining how when she didn't hear her music, in her earpiece, she thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
What a pro.
She did it.
What a pro. Heard the music stopped for a second, and I think maybe you heard this too, Craig. She said, if you want to help me, and she just started singing a cappella beautifully. She has a beautiful voice, singing America the Beautiful, and she had the Armed Forces Choir and the U.S. Naval Academy Glee Club was singing along with her, but just about everyone in the audience seemed to be singing along.
Ivanka Trump's telling her you were
probably saying that very thing.
She's like, oh my gosh, what were you going to do in that moment? And you were, I mean, that's what the body language
exactly
suggests.
Exactly it. Like a pro. She handled it like the pro that she is. That's exactly probably what Ivanka's telling her right now. Joe Roach, are you still with us?
I sure am, Belkis.
Any idea what
watching
where the president is or is headed, or has he made any stops? Has he started signing yet? Do we know?
We're waiting to see. I mean, as is typical in this situation, he would now go while we're keeping an eye on the luncheon here. That doesn't look like it's really gotten underway. I still see napkins folded on plates there, and everybody saying hello to each other. So it would be presumed that he has stepped off to the side to this special room that was built there on Capitol Hill in order to sign some of these executive actions, some of these memorandums, to enact them. Some interesting tidbits as we're, because we can't see the room, we're not in the room with him. This is a room that was essentially built back in the 1800s, 1850s, as part of a capital expansion project, and it allowed the president, because at that time, the start of the legislative session here on Capitol Hill, as well as the presidency, were tied to one singular date, and that was in early March. So when they built this expansion on Capitol Hill, they built this room for the president, knowing that the end of the legislative session, as well as the end of one presidency, would be coinciding on the same day. And that meant that on the final day of the presidency, even into the overnight hours, the president at the time would be going into this room and would be signing last-minute legislation that Congress was passing and essentially just sending right over to him. And he could stay in that room up until the inauguration, the swearing in of the next president. Now, back in the mid-1900s, 1933, with the 20th Amendment, they unlinked the congressional start of the calendar year and moved it to January 3rd, and then the inauguration is today, as we know it, January 20th, every 4 years. So that doesn't necessarily happen so much anymore. The room is largely ceremonial. Again, we're not in that room right now. We don't have eyes on that room right now, but it's presumed that that is where Trump is right now, or at least heading in that direction, so that he would be able to start signing some of these executive actions that he's been talking about, specifically on immigration and so forth. And we are getting more word right now on what some of these pardons could look like that he's been promising for those January 6th rioters and defendants. Essentially that he is going to pardon non-violent offenders that took part in the January 6th riots, and essentially commute the sentences of others who were maybe involved in more violent offenses, so that they would be able to be released from prison. And then the Department of Justice is essentially going to urge and make a move to dismiss any cases that are pending trial at this point. So just some flair for you of what's happening likely behind the scenes there, Craig and Belkis.
You mentioned this, Joe. The President and the First Lady have arrived in that room for the signing ceremony, greeted by the bipartisan members of the Inaugural Committee that organized all of this. We'll listen in because, again, ordinarily this is just a signing ceremony, but we're sure we'll hear something from the President as he signs his
22 cabinet and cabinet-level appointments for your signature.
Okay.
The next one will be, the next one will be 47 sub-cabinet level appointments, sir.
But you don't have to sign 47.
Thank you, sir. Now 31 acting designations and appointments to effectively take control of the government.
Let's do that.
That's important.
That's important, isn't it?
We have 15 commission chairman and acting chairman appointments.
Send it.
Commission chairman and acting chairman.
He was number one at Harvard also. You know that?
Good counsel.
They have something in common.
Thank you, sir. Lastly, we have a proclamation ordering that on all future inauguration days, including this inauguration day, that flags shall be flown at full mast.
Very important.
to have an inauguration tonight. The sound was so good. The temperature was 72 degrees, but the sound was so good. All right, so maybe something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good acoustics. Yes.
All right. Now thank you. We go to lunch.
Great. Very
Nice
good.
to meet you. Thank you very much. There we go. Like that.
It's not wired for audio, which is why, sorry, you're getting the audio off the cameras, because it's usually just sign and leave.
Wait, does that count? He's passing out pens, but he didn't use them to sign anything. Hey, come on, Perez, I want a pen you used to sign something.
Still got the presidential seal.
That's true, that's true.
That was a stagecoach.
That is true.
But it was, I thought it was beautiful. Thank you. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Check.
Mr. President, do you have any reaction to the pardons that President Biden did at the last minute?
Well, I'm not going to discuss it now. I think it was unfortunate that he did that. We won't discuss it now. There's plenty of time to discuss it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Should we go to lunch?
Thank you guys very much.
Okay.
So before the reporters were kicked out, a couple tried to get questions in.
Right.
And again, it's not wired for sound, so you might not have been able to hear. But they asked his thoughts on the last-minute pardons granted by former President Biden. And he said, I'm not going to discuss that now.
Later on, another time.
Although he did allude to it in his remarks.
He talked about it in the second round, in that second round of remarks, not that during the address, but.
And then I think you heard Senator Klobuchar say just now that you've signed these, now we can all go have lunch. So now he's headed to Statuary Hall for the ceremony there. It's a little lighter on ceremony. It's lunch.
240 people there waiting. There's 23 tables of 10, and then there is a head table where obviously he will be sitting with 9 others. It will be interesting to see who is sitting with him at that head table. Will it be members of his family? Will it be members of the administration? Will it be the Elon Musks of the world? Will it be, who might be sitting up there with him?
Family, and the Vances, of course, the vice president. They get the head table treatment up there, and everyone else is seated and patiently waiting for the announcement, the arrival, and another round of Hail to the Chief, I guess, when they make their way inside for the luncheon.
One of the orders signed was the full mast that on this day and moving forward, all flags will fly at full staff. That was a little bit of controversy in the passing of former President Jimmy Carter, that it's customary to have flags flying at half staff after the death of a president for 30 days. And he did not like the fact that the flags were going to be flying at half-mast on the day of his inauguration. So looks like he just took care of that.
For inaugurations to come, indeed. So yeah, everybody's
seated and waiting, and maybe word's gotten out that the president is on his way now.
I was listening to something. What was the main course? What's the? I'm back to food.
Crab cake, first course. Omaha steak, second course with some veggies, and the third course was basically it's a fancy apple pie with ice cream.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to put it in easy terms.
That's a pretty good.
Which is interesting because usually there's menu items that are representative of the president and the vice president's state. So maybe you would have thought there might be some stone crabs from Florida, since that's his home state. Although he does have a nice steak for J.D. Vance's home state. So that's represented, but maybe there would have been a key lime pie or something. I don't know.
Well, they're going to want to scarf it down because in any number of first couples have talked about it. Inauguration is exhausting, not only just because you're up first thing in the morning and you've got the event here in the parade, but by the time you get to the White House, to get out of your inaugural clothing,
put on your tux.
You've got to put on your tux and your ball gown for the inaugural galas, and there's not a lot of time. And I don't know how many he's having. What, 3 or 4? Three
official balls. But there's always many other events that take place, but he won't be attending those.
You bop in.
Mark Zuckerberg is hosting something tonight for him, Meta.
You bop in, you dance, you go to the next one, you bop in, you dance, you go to the next one. But nowhere in there do you hear dinner. So I think it was Michelle Obama in her book talked about after their first swearing in, or his first swearing in, getting home and just being ravenous because there's no time between the parade and then you run home. And in some cases, not for the Trumps, it's the first time you're in the White House, in the residence, and you're getting acquainted and whatnot.
Sounds like my wedding. It wrapped up and I was starved.
So I hope they enjoy a full lunch because they're going to need it. Because they still have a full day ahead.
So I'm thinking, J.D. Vance is from Ohio. Like, what's Ohio food? Because I just thought of Florida. I'm thinking fish. I'm thinking key lime pie. I'm thinking all these Florida things. But, like, what's an Ohio thing? What do people eat in Ohio? We need Mike DePasquale out here. He's from Cincinnati. He could tell us. But steak is and potatoes gratin. That's pretty hearty Americana. So that's right about this point, these people are going to want a nice hearty meal after waiting around. Now the lunch now an hour and 15 minutes behind schedule, but well worth the wait. I would guess that if you ask them, they would say it's worth the wait to be there.
Joe, maybe you can amplify some of what we started to talk about here on the evening ahead and the balls that the Trumps have elected to be a part of this evening.
Usually there's a few balls, as you said. They're going to dip in and out of a few of them. I'm looking over my notes right here. There's going to be the Commander-in-Chief ball that starts tonight, scheduled right now around 7:30. That is the event where it's going to be at a convention center here in Washington, D.C. And at that event is where you'll see him and First Lady Melania Trump deliver their first dance. It'll be at a Liberty Ball as well that they're going to attend, and they will do a first dance at the Liberty Ball there at another event. And then there's going to be a Starlight Ball. That's going to be at Union Station, not far from where we are right now here in Washington, D.C. They will also have a first dance there. All of these are scheduled to see, if I'm counting through here, you're looking at about 7:30 for one ball that starts, and then you're looking at about 8:25 if they stick to the schedule for the second ball. And then the Starlight Ball, the final one, would be at about 9:15 tonight. So that should be the order of events. Of course, nothing ever really plays out that way. It'll wind up being a much longer thing because they're TBD, to be determined, to arrive back at the White House tonight is unscheduled right now. So you don't even know when they're going to end up back at the White House. And of course, given the fact that he's going to be traveling after this luncheon over to the Capital One Arena, where 20,000 supporters or more are waiting right now for him. He will spend a lot of time in Capital One Arena, spending time there with them, and we're understanding sign some more executive actions there on stage, so that people there can see him, fulfilling his duties as Commander-in-Chief here on day one in Washington, D.C. Craig and Belkis.
Lots of to do after this lunch. There is no rest for the weary when it comes to the newly inaugurated president and the First Lady over the course of the next several hours, jumping from lunch, home, outfit changes, ball to ball to ball, dances, photos, handshakes, speeches, moving on. I wonder if Melania will make it to the Capital One Arena, or if she may need a little bit of a break, because as we all know, we ladies tend to need a little more prep time than you guys do. All you have to do is shower, shave, and put on your tux. The hardest part, probably getting the bow tie just right. And I'm sure President Trump has people for that'll set up that bow tie for him.
Or just use the clip-on.
Or use the clip-on. Is that your trick?
I still can't learn how to tie a bow tie.
Is that your trick? While we wait for the new president to come into the luncheon here, we are hearing from the now former president.
Just a few moments ago at his departure ceremony at Joint Base Andrews.
Let me close where I began with my sincere gratitude. And I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I've been doing this for 50 years with the best group of people. Hard to say. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. And I tell you what, a greater honor is being able to serve with all of you. You're incredible. You really are. You really are. Mark my words. History's going to judge what you've done as one of the most significant contributions that's been made by all of America.
The former president and former first lady moments ago at Joint Base Andrews as they prepare to head to Southern California now. And not only is it the White House.
Right, the movers aren't the only busy teams.
Everything as of 12:01 on January 20th shifts. And this is evidence of that.
The marketing and PR department is very busy. Oh, let's listen in. It looks like the lunch is about to get started.
The Speaker of the House, the Honorable Mike Johnson, accompanied by Mrs. Johnson. Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles Schumer, accompanied by Mrs. Weinschall Schumer. House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, accompanied by Mrs. Scalise. And House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
So as we were saying, as the bipartisan committee, the inaugural committee is introduced, they're the ones who put all this together, as we've told you. They're announced first, and they deserve a round of applause for all their hard work making this day happen. 12:01, everything changes. The websites, the social media, the furniture is out.
Please remain standing for the honors and the invocation.
And now we will join the lunch. If only we could have a setting for the two of us as well.
If only.
Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President of the United States, ranking member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fisher and Mr. Fisher. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance, accompanied by Mrs. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States, the Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. Bessler. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump and Mrs. Trump.
I have a feeling people are very hungry, so I'm going to get this started. Mr. President and Madam First Lady, Mr. Vice President and Madam Second Lady, my colleague Senator Fisher, distinguished guests including the Speaker, Leader Jeffries, and Senate Leaders Thune and Schumer, on behalf of the United States Congress, welcome to the 60th inaugural lunch. Big surprise, we are featuring Nebraska beef and Minnesota apples for dessert. We are here in Statuary Hall where these luncheons have taken place since President Reagan's first inauguration in 1981, and where the House of Representatives once met over 150 years ago. That would be before you were born, Mr. Speaker. In 1864, after the new House wing of the Capitol was built, and in the midst of the Civil War, Congress dedicated this chamber to host statues chosen by every state. Walking into the hall, we all passed under the arch, holding the marble car of history clock. The statue shows Cleo, the Greek muse of history, holding a book to record events as they happen. And as you can see, she's heard a lot of stuff. And as she rides her chariot forward into the future, she looks behind her to remember the past. She remains here as she has for hundreds of years, a reminder that history will remember the events of the present, and it is on us to write that history right now. Speaking of art, the painting right here before you, I chose this painting for this lunch this summer, and it's titled American Horizon. It's by Jane Wilson, who grew up on her family farm in Seymour, Iowa. Coming from the middle of our country, Senator Fisher and I both liked the painting because the artist is from America's heartland, but the horizon could easily be Florida, Mr. President. I will also note that this is the first time in history we are featuring the work of a woman artist at this lunch, and we thank the Art Institute of Chicago for their assistance. Looking at the vast open landscape of this painting, we're drawn to the bottom of the frame where the land or the water, depending on where you're from, meets the sky, and the horizon endures. The enduring horizon is especially meaningful for us today as we mark our enduring democracy as we approach its 250th anniversary. It's a reminder that what's over the horizon is our next chapter. And it is my prayer that the people in this room can write that chapter together. I'd now like to ask U.S. Senate Chaplain Dr. Barry Black, and we thank God he is back with us and in good health, to deliver the invocation, after which lunch will be served. Thank you.
Let us pray. King of kings and Lord of lords, whose kingdom is above all earthly kingdoms, and who judges all lesser sovereignties, look with favor upon President Donald John Trump and Vice President James David Vance. Empower them with the wisdom and courage needed for our times. Protect them from the vicissitudes and challenges that obstruct the making of a world of justice, peace, and righteousness. Lord, give them a deep desire to do their best for our country and world, and a determination to act in ways pleasing to you. Preserve their families in health and strength by your grace and power. Bless now this luncheon as each of us finds your grace sufficient for every need. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
And now
lunch begins.
Will be served.
Everyone quite hungry. Not a lot of talking going on. As we mentioned before, we're starting, it's 3-course lunch, crab cakes, the Omaha steak, followed by the apple Turin. Apples from Minnesota.
Yeah,
Senator Klobuchar mentioned.
Beautiful piece of wall art presented there. Have not seen the inaugural photos, but that's usually what they do. Maybe they're not doing it this time around, but ordinarily that's what they present.
Maybe they were part of the schedule, but again, we're
well,
trying to keep things moving and keep things brief. So they may have cut stuff out of the program.
A beautiful, sunny, bitter cold day in the nation's capital, as they often tend to be in January, as we look at the east front of the Capitol building, where just a short while ago was the site of the departure ceremony for the former president and former first lady. And we do know, as I mentioned earlier, that there will be some business conducted. The Senate is expected to gavel into session. Well, they're going to be late. I think the schedule had it at 3:15. In fact, yeah. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee was supposed to meet at 3:15 today. Some of the members may be in that luncheon, so that could come later, but they are slated to meet to vote on the nominations for Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense.
Both of whom we saw attending that luncheon.
Yes. So,
one having a bit of a rough time, the other expected to sail right through his nomination.
Looks like both will probably be confirmed because, again, you have to understand they can't go about the business of running the Pentagon or being the chief U.S. diplomat without that vote. So they need to be confirmed, and those are usually dispensed with as soon around January 20th as possible to get them so they can hit the ground running. So there is some work that's going to be going on in Capitol Hill today.
You said it best. It does look like a beautiful day there in our nation's capital, but it is bitter, bitter cold out. There's wind chills that are making the temperature there feel like single digits. And President Trump said himself when they were out there saying goodbye to Mr. and Mrs. Biden, they said the sun was very misleading, that he was very glad that they moved the inaugural ceremony inside. Of course, that did limit the number of people that could attend. It went from a platform that seats about over 1,000 people to maybe 600 or 700 plus inside the Capitol Rotunda. Congress people, invited guests, family members and whatnot. But they did have the overflow where he did stop and speak after the official inaugural address, which he seemed to relish in that moment and really loved just going off the cuff and doing what he does best, which is being Donald J. Trump.
It's a big disappointment for an awful lot of people that the parade won't be happening in the traditional sense down Pennsylvania Avenue and in the reviewing stand and so on. Joe Rotes is with us in Washington. Joe, we've mentioned it, but maybe you could walk us through what's this going to look like, because they can't accommodate all of the people who would have lined the parade route, but they can accommodate plenty.
20,000.
So what's this going to look like? I mean, an indoor parade, pep rally, walk us through that.
Essentially, that's exactly what it will be. This is going to only be a fraction of what would have attended on the National Mall. Again, the Capital One Arena there can accommodate some 20,000 people. I mean, save for some seats that we see set up there on the floor. But again, you're going to have this presidential parade also making its way around. As for the other 180,000 people that came here to Washington, D.C., I'm sure some ended up canceling their plans. Maybe they stayed home, but plenty did still come here. And we've seen them wandering the streets here, outside of the FIU D.C. Center where we are right now. Some have actually come inside. They sat here. They applauded. They watched the president take his swearing in or take his oath of office, and so people have kind of been coming and flowing, and there's sort of this vibrance here in the nation's capital right now, as these folks have, some of them still lining the streets, some of them still making their way over to the National Mall. But because it is so cold out, I've mentioned that they've actually taken down the large TVs that they would have put outside so that people could watch this all unfolding on the west side of the Capitol as it normally would. Those have all come down because they don't want people congregating out here in the cold. So a lot of people, we've noticed even as early as last night, were hitting up some of the restaurants, some of the bars around town here in Washington, D.C. So the economy here in Washington, D.C. is certainly thriving. As this is going to unfold here today, he is going to take his motorcade over. It's too far of a walk. He's going to drive over to Capital One Arena. He has promised his supporters that he would be in attendance over there at Capital One Arena for this presidential parade, something that if it was on the streets of Washington, D.C., he would be out in public and be a part of. He's very much going to do that over at the Capital One Arena. I mentioned not too long ago that he is also going to be signing a couple of more executive actions as well as memorandums there so that people can see him do so. And of course, I'll have his supporters there to cheer him on as he does that. So this will be a day of action as well for President Donald Trump as he's here in office. So this will be a couple of hours. You're going to have a number of bands, a number of people here that are going to make their way through the Capital One Arena. There's going to be, first off and foremost, there's going to be a number of Army, Navy bands that are going to go through, representatives of that. There's also going to be members of the Butler County first responders. Butler County, as you may or may not know, for those at home, is the area that Trump in Pennsylvania over the summer was an attempt was made on his life. So he's going to honor them there as part of this initial part of the ceremony. There's also going to be firefighters from Boca Raton that have come up here to make their way around the Capital One Arena. There are going to be Palm Beach first responders down Mar-a-Lago, of course, in Palm Beach, that are going to be up here making their way around the Capital One Arena, all for him to view, for him to be a part of, all part of this special day. That's really where the pomp and pageantry will come in here in the next hour to 2 hours here as he kind of makes his way away from Capitol Hill and then starts to get into the niceties of the day. Craig and Belkis.
Joe, any idea how long this is going to go? I mean, there are like 7,500 people that were going to take part in this parade. They're represented from 23 different states, high school marching bands, university marching bands, and, you remember high school, especially. A trip like this is such a trip of a lifetime. It takes so much money to fundraise and everything else. I think among the bands that are going to be there or would have been in the parade is J.D. Vance's high school marching band from Middletown High School. Are these marching bands still going to get their moment to shine, if you will? Do you know? Because it'd be so disappointing for them.
I'm sure it would. I think, as we saw today, just before the swearing-in ceremony here, they're going to have to make those adjustments, make those cuts as much as needed to try and fit this. I'm looking at the schedule right now. They're budgeting about an hour and a half to 2 hours for this presidential parade before the president makes his way back over to the Oval Office and has another Oval Office signing ceremony over there. That's supposed to happen at around about 5 o'clock today. So, I mean, if they stay on track, you may see some cuts, some rearranging, if you will, of the presidential parade, or maybe he ducks out at some point and allows his supporters there to continue watching this here in Washington, D.C. But, he, of course, has a schedule, as any president does throughout the day, that he's going to have to try to stick to. Otherwise, he's going to be getting home from some of these inaugural balls at 2, 3, 4 in the morning if he were to stick to that, which obviously isn't going to happen. So he'll try to accommodate as much as he can, but they may be making some last-minute tweaks and adjustments here to try and get everybody in that they possibly can. But yes, we did see that the Middletown marching band was supposed to be there on the original playlist there, Belkis.
Well, Joe, we know there's a lot of happy people inside the Capital One Arena waiting for this quote-unquote, I feel like a pep rally is a better description for it than parade, but there's a lot of not so happy people out there, too, in D.C. that made their way. They wanted to see it. They want to be a part of history, and a lot of disappointed people. Have you seen or heard or spoken to any of those folks?
Yeah, we've had a chance to mingle with them. Some of them are upset that, they spent the time, they spent the money to come all this way. But as we've been seeing here, there's been this cohesiveness that, it's almost like a sporting event, if you will. And so many of Donald Trump's rallies over the years have been just like a sporting event. As they get here, and maybe, getting off the plane, they thought, well, gee, this isn't what I expected. But you do meet up with like-minded individuals, people, again, just like a sports team, you're there with your fans, you're there with your fellow fans. And so there's still this feeling of camaraderie and people being together on what for Republicans is a very happy day here in Washington, D.C. And there's plenty of people that are just excited, Belkis, to be a part of that. I mean, the last few days, there have been plenty of people that have known they would not be able to stand out in the cold, or at least it wasn't recommended that they stand out in the cold, and that all of this was going to be moved indoors. And still, they got on the plane and they came here to Washington, D.C. When we flew up over the weekend, there were still plenty of Trump supporters. They were wearing their shirts, they were wearing their hats, they were still coming up here because they still wanted to be a part of this moment in history, as important as it was to them. Keep in mind that they've worked for this over the last few years. They've supported this, whether it was volunteering, whether it was voting, or whether it was monetarily. They've supported this, and even if they weren't able to be there on the National Mall, they're still walking away with some sort of a story today to say, I was there when Donald Trump was sworn in for the second time on January 20th, 2025.
And like you said, Joe, there's the business, the economic aspect of this, that it's so cold outside. They took away those big screen TVs, so a lot of people will have to head to their local bars, restaurants, hotel bars, hotel lobbies, and, really stimulate the economy down there, buying food, buying drinks, and hanging out and celebrating the inauguration of President Trump again. I'd read somewhere that the folks at the Capital One Arena, the people inside, that they're going to get Big Macs, because we all know the president is a huge fan of his Mickey D's, and some commemorative Coca-Colas. I don't know if you've heard that, Joe, but that would certainly be kind of fun. Oh, as we look at a live picture of the Capital One Arena, where we usually see the Washington Wizards and the Capitals play hockey and basketball, but not this afternoon.
And yeah, I mean, it looks like a campaign rally, like you would see, leading up to this. But again, they've had to make do, and they're trying to accommodate as many supporters as they possibly can. So this was the best resolution to move it to this arena facility, where you'll get somewhat of a parade feel and certainly a pep rally feel, but for the supporters there, it's important for them to see the president and first lady and the vice president and second lady, so they'll have a chance to do that.
For those people that did get inside, and when the president speaks, this is going to be really a much more intimate moment for them to share with the newly elected president, as opposed to being out in the National Mall maybe with seats that they would have been way in the back. And here, this is just a bit of a smaller, more intimate setting, so they may have lucked out. Joe, I heard some people were standing outside to be the first to get in or score a seat in here as early as like midnight. I don't know if you want to call it yesterday or midnight, today, 12:01 this morning. Did you hear that?
That's very likely possible. Again, I mean, think about how many people have descended here on Washington, D.C., Balkis. I mean, you're talking 200,000 people, and even if some did cancel, you're still going to end up with, if half of them canceled, you're still ending up with 100,000 people. So to fit 20,000 people inside there, they are going to line up early. And I can tell you from past experiences, just when Trump was campaigning across state after state after state, and we would go out there and we would talk to people who were waiting to get inside his rallies. Some of them would get in line 2-3 days in advance, and it was almost like you felt, talking to these supporters of his, that they were almost like fans of the Grateful Dead or something. They would follow him and talk about, I saw him out in Illinois, I saw him out in Kentucky, and that was my first time seeing him give a Trump rally. So they really followed him around, from one place to another and obviously today is a historic day for them and for the president himself. So it would not surprise anybody to find out that some of these people made sure to get in line at 12 o'clock last night, or 12 o'clock this morning, in order to ensure that they would have their space to get in line. The difference is, and I've seen it before where we were in Florida and people would get in line 2-3 days in advance. It was hot outside, and they would have to take turns with their family members, and then they would someone maybe go to the bathroom or maybe go shower, go grab a bite to eat. They would come back and then switch out. Well, this is a different turnaround here because you're dealing with, these biting cold temperatures. So some of them would have had to have been bundled up, or maybe had a way to figure it out, maybe 2-3 hours at most before you swap out with somebody that was going to come in and maybe stay there in line for you so that they could get inside. And I'm sure that the Trump team did take that into consideration, knowing that they would have people waiting outside there. They wouldn't want to keep them out in the bitter cold that long. But it does not surprise me that they would be out there so early in the morning trying to get in line so that they could be a part of what is now going to be a very visual show for everybody, and considering how many people were supposed to be here in Washington, D.C., such a small, intimate venue, for them to say that they were there, they were a part of that. Belkis, Craig.
And Joe, in some ways, I know it was a last-minute scramble, especially by security folks, to rearrange everything, because they did move everything inside, the rotunda, the arena, etc. But on some levels, security-wise, this is almost a little easier to manage because it is inside.
It certainly is. I mean, so by moving the event inside, you're essentially just working with the Capitol Police at that point. Now, the anti-scalable fencing, the barbed wire fencing that has been going up since back in November, all of that remains. It's not like they broke any of that down, over the last 2 to 3 days. That still remains in place around the Capitol, leading down to the White House, because there is still movement back and forth between all of these places for the president's motorcade. He still needs to make his way, well, earlier when he was the president-elect still, he needed to make his way from the White House up to Capitol Hill, and now he's going to need to leave Capitol Hill and then travel over to the Capitol One arena there, where everybody is waiting for him. So some of the barricades and everything still remain in place. Last night when we came in, there were troops that were on the ground, and they were blocking different exits around the Beltway here in Washington, D.C., kind of corralling cars that needed to go in a certain direction. So it is easier in the sense that for them, it's certainly more contained. And that is something that after the attempt on the president's life, the Secret Service had talked about, hey, why don't you move things indoors? Because it's much harder for us to try and keep you safe if you're outside, where we have less control over who might be on a rooftop, who might be in a window, or what have you. And they did work around that a little bit with some bulletproof glass that they worked around him with. But moving him inside today, it definitely lessens a little bit of the concern. But the troops, the police officers, they're still there. Going back to what I said, is they're making their way to and from the Capitol and going to these different venues. You'll still see some people, not 200,000, but you're still seeing some people lining up there on the street so they can get a glimpse of the beast, the presidential limousine, as well as the motorcade as it goes by them. You're not seeing them 3, 4, 5 people deep up against the barricades, but you are seeing them lining that route there that they would see people on. And for that, they still need those police officers. And we know very well that there are South Florida police officers from Sweetwater, Miami Beach, as well as North Bay Village who came up here. Well, it wasn't all for naught. They're still out there working. They're still out there in the cold, probably missing those Miami temperatures right now, to try and keep both the president safe as well as the people who are still kind of wandering the streets here. Craig and Belkis.
Joe, with the short amount of time we have left, first 100 days, so much as always, that's considered such an important watermark in any new White House, any new administration. The president touched on it in his inaugural address and his off-the-cuff remarks after that. He controls both chambers of Congress, albeit by a narrow margin. In the first 100 days, immigration, obviously. What can we expect to see when they hit the ground running tomorrow from this White House?
There's going to be a number of things that he's going to do, and he's going to start with specifically with immigration, sending troops down to the border is something he wants to do by declaring a national emergency. That would give him the presidential powers to use those funds and to move those troops down to the border to try and secure the border. He's going to want to get back to work on the border wall down there. We've talked about him ending birthright citizenship. Again, some of these are easier said than done. He can say that he wants to do something, but by the time that, all it takes is somebody filing a lawsuit, and that will happen. In fact, I'm looking through feeds right now, and there are already lawsuits that are being filed right now to try and stop some of the efforts that he has been talked about. I mean, people have had plenty of time to try and get the language together, to try and slow down some of what the president wants to enact here. There are those mass deportations that we've talked about. What those look like in the coming days, in these first 100 days, it remains to be seen. But he has promised that there will be deportation raids on places of work, schools if necessary, that they will be sweeping in and they will be removing people who have been here in the country illegally. And you can expect to see that unfold over the next couple of weeks. How all of this impacts the country, to what extent visually we're seeing it, still remains to be seen. But it is something that he said he is going to do. And by the way, you heard him talk today here on Capitol Hill. Within the first 5 minutes of his swearing in, it's something he does intend to follow up on. Craig, Belkis?
Yeah, is there anything, and again, we've got very little time left, is there anything on that agenda that he outlined in those two moments that right out of the gate is not going to happen?
It depends. It would probably, if it's something that's not going to happen, I would have to say ending the birthright citizenship. It's enshrined in the Constitution with an amendment right now, so it's far less likely to happen. He's talked about wanting to do something like build detention camps to hold undocumented immigrants who are awaiting deportation. Whether or not that's something that can happen, especially within the first 100 days or not, still remains to be seen. Expanding the border wall is something that he wants to do. How fast he can get, people in place and materials in place is something that remains to be seen, but something that he is intent on doing. And he does this, again, with the backdrop of saying that all of this, Craig and Belkis, is for national security and something that he pledged to commit to while he was on the campaign trail.
Well, it's certainly, Joe Rhodes in Washington, thank you. It's certainly a lengthy agenda which he campaigned on. He says he won the White House on a lot of these topics, a lot of these issues that he's put forth. And again, when he went off the cuff after his inaugural address, he went in on some of those controversial areas that he's determined to see if he can push through. Joe raises the point about legal challenges, some of which is already starting to happen, but it's not for lack of articulating the desire. Whether he can get the support he needs to get these matters through Congress, we'll see. He's got an ally in the Speaker, in Mike Johnson, Leader Thune in the Senate. They're still developing a relationship because John Thune is new in that role. So we'll see how it all unfolds. But the Trump administration, they're voting this afternoon for a couple of key appointments, is rapidly taking shape and rapidly about to take charge.
One thing to say it on the campaign trail, make every promise that you can make to try to get elected. But now you are at the big kids table. You're in the Oval. You're a Republican president, but you've also got Republicans that are assuming control of Congress. So a lot of people hoping that what he said on the campaign trail, he will be able to come to fruition and get his legislative agenda accomplished. And we'll all be waiting and watching as we've got the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump, back at the White House.
And all of that work will get underway at full steam ahead tomorrow. Today is a day for celebration, and that continues at Statuary Hall. The luncheon, post-luncheon rally, inaugural balls this evening, and we'll have complete coverage. Thank you for being with us. I'm Craig Stevens.
I'm Belkis Naray. We'll see you back here at on the night team at 10.